Chapter 1071. Chinamo didn't receive a reply. When he opened his eyes, he saw the youngster's slightly depressed expression. It was a pretty face. What? Can't you treat me as a little kid? Chinamo asked as he touched her head, probably to check if the bandage was still there. Bojio had forgotten about it. She would have to remove the bandage before heading out. It's sad to be treated as a kid even though you're already an adult. I thought the main point of my sentence was my home. With that, he closed his eyes. Sleep for a while more. My home? Bojio suppressed the urge to kiss him. She listened to the Almighty's heartbeat and replied, sleep. Chinamo really needed to rest. That was why he went back to sleep after that. Bojio waited for almost half an hour before standing up. The Almighty had indeed been watching her. It wasn't an illusion. The people outside the Chin family's house seemed to be following her wherever she went. But it wasn't impossible for her to shake them off. It was a good opportunity to spar with them and test their skills. It would be easy to kidnap the Almighty. Bojio pondered as she walked into the bathroom. It was 2:30 p.m. The courtyard was quite a distance from Hu University. No matter what, he had to change his clothes. This was a sign of respect for gay activities. But after searching for half a day, she could only wear a dark red t-shirt. She added a thin hooded jacket. The jacket wasn't really meant to be worn. She wore a black watch band on her fair wrist, its surface reflecting light as she moved. She bit the pen cap and wrote a note to the Almighty stating the reason. Once everything was arranged, she went downstairs. There were people at the 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock directions. Bojio arched a brow. She walked to the wall and placed Princess under the shade. She smiled and escaped. The jacket was held up by the tree branches. From other directions, only the corner of the jacket could be seen. It seemed as though Bojio was squatting and playing with the cat. In reality, the youngster had already kicked with her long legs. Using the force, she reached out and leaped onto the wall handsomely, landing swiftly and cleanly. The dark red t-shirt matched with the youngster's bright smile. It was both handsome and devilish. However, it was a little awkward. When she looked up, she saw the two old men looking at her and shaking their heads. The little kid that Chinamo brought back is mischievous again. It's normal for children to climb over walls. Those eyes were filled with love. Bojio coughed and was about to speak. Little friend, go ahead. There are so many people looking at you. I don't know what that cold brat is thinking. Just don't go and not come back. I'll be back once I'm done. Thank you, grandpas. He waved his hand, implying that he did not mind. After that, the two old men continued to focus their attention on the chessboard. They were indeed like generals. The first thing Bojio did when she left the courtyard was to contact Lin Feng. How is it? I'm already here, why aren't you here yet? Lin Feng's voice was lazy. Hurry up, it's hot outside. Bojio didn't understand. If it's hot, enter the shop first. Not entering. Lin Feng was still a little awkward. It's my first time meeting a gay man and it's all girls there. It'll be so awkward if I go to the table. When you come, we can go in together. Bojio. Why are you looking for a girlfriend when you're so shy? You should just stick with Almighty Yun. Chapter 1072. Lin Feng, who was walking in and out of Huda, was dressed to the nines. He was wearing a mask and a hat, and the only thing that could be seen was his eyes. Those who didn't know better would think that he was using a secret signal to communicate with others. But he had to. Supreme Alliance was at its peak right now. Popular players like Bojio, Lin Feng, and Yun who were easily recognized when they went out. But when he saw Bojio, Lin Feng felt depressed. Why did he look like a lunatic when he dressed up? She was wearing a black mask and a dark red t-shirt, which made her look even more handsome. She was completely different from him. Let's go in, Bojio said, pushing the door open. At this point, Lin Feng felt that he had lost again. He tidied up his appearance and strode in as well. The base meeting was on the same day. The people invited were all the president of the fan club. In reality, there weren't many people. But there was one girl who took the high-speed train from Lin City. They were really excited since they had never met their Almighty in such a manner. Just as the girls were having a friendly conversation, one of them glanced up and caught sight of the youngster walking over. The youngster was wearing a black mask and a matching earring, which made his eyes seem deep. He was still holding his phone in his hand, and he looked natural and handsome as he walked over. After seeing his silver-gray hair, the girls were already a little stunned by his handsomeness. Bojio was carefree, sitting down when she saw a seat. She reached out and flipped the menu. Everyone is here, what do you want to eat? They were surprised that they had entered the ordering phase so quickly. The girls felt as though they were still in a dream. But the person in front of them was indeed Big Spade. Almighty Lin isn't here yet, one of the girls said softly. Bojio reached out and removed the black mask. She supported the side of her face with one hand and tilted her head, smiling. He's here, but he needs to prepare himself mentally. The girl was originally the president of Uncle Yin's fan club. When she saw the youngster's smile, she froze. All the girls felt that Big Spade's face was too lethal after removing his mask. He was so handsome that they couldn't concentrate. In addition, everyone was very excited at this time. They couldn't suppress the smiles on their faces, and their hearts were beating faster. Lin Feng felt the same way. After all, he had never met his fans in this way before. But they still had to meet. Therefore, Lin Feng, who pretended to be cool, followed closely behind. Only then did everyone arrive. Bojio started ordering. Since the girls weren't looking at the menu anymore, they were all staring at the two of them. When they got excited, they would grab the hands of the people around them. They were all here to see their Almighty. Now that their wishes had come true, of course they were happy. The dishes Bojio ordered were all meat, but since there was a girl around, she ordered 2 more plates of vegetables and a fruit salad. The girls couldn't control their wildly beating hearts. Someone asked Bojio, "Can Big Spade take a photo?" Bojio glanced over but didn't reply. That person immediately explained. His voice was filled with unconcealable joy. "We won't take pictures of our faces. We'll just take pictures of our hands together to tell everyone that we're meeting up." Chapter 1073. Sure. Lin Feng placed his hand on her shoulder. He was rather forthright now. Bojio didn't object, smiling faintly as she nodded. The person in charge of taking photos used a selfie stick. After raising the mobile phone, everyone stretched out 2 fingers and put them together. After piecing them together, it was a very tall and beautiful picture. That person took a glance, thinking that Big Spade's hands with the black ring would definitely go crazy if it was released. That was the truth. Initially, the person had uploaded the photo with the intention of showing off the delicacies. Who would have known that every fan club president would have such a change? After adding one, the photo went viral immediately. "Gay meetup? Who is it?" "I heard it's with Big Spade and Almighty Lin. It's a pity I'm not from here, it's too far." "Ah, gay meetup." There were some who reacted slowly. After seeing the photo, they started to search for clues. Big Spade and Almighty Lin are among them? "Look at the hands, don't you think 2 of the fingers are too outstanding?" It was indeed outstanding, the black ring was eye-catching. "If this isn't my Big Spade's hand, I'll swallow my keyboard." "Oh, I'm going crazy, I'm so envious of the people who can attend the meetup. I heard from my good friend they're eating now, they'll be going to KTV later. I wanted to block out her moments, but now I can't wait to understand the entire process. It would be nice to listen to the live broadcast." The official fan clubs at S and comments never stopped. On this day, everyone was restless. The girls who came to attend the meetup were even more excited until Lin Feng mentioned the farewell party. The atmosphere suddenly fell into a stillness. It was as though a party had just ended and everyone was still yearning for more. Then it was announced that everything had ended and there wouldn't be a next time. Perhaps it was even heavier than that. Because everyone knew in their hearts. Regardless of who was missing, Supreme Alliance would never be the same again. Besides, it was Yunhu who was leaving. Other than Yunhu, Almighty Qin would be heading overseas to recuperate and Spade would be following him. Which meant that Supreme Alliance would lose 3 members. They would be torn apart. That was everyone's first thought. It wasn't a good feeling. Especially for them esports fans. Some of the fan leaders were already very old. When they liked Supreme Alliance, they hadn't dated yet. That was when they were still in university. It was the first time they understood the world. No matter what, as long as you worked hard, you could change the outcome. When they first met Supreme Alliance, it was at its peak. At that time, Almighty Qin held a gun and entered the territory alone. No one dared to get close to him. At that time, Linda and Yundo were still rookies with strong personalities. Although his playstyle wasn't that skillful, it gave people unlimited expectations. Later on, Supreme Alliance hit a low point, but it had never been so miserable. If there was anything that was the most unbearable, that was their helplessness at that time. However, it was still this group of people who had leapt up step by step from the lowest point. They were the true kings who had returned, their sharpness unstoppable. Just when they thought that they could continue to accompany them like this, everything was over. They knew very well that the lifespan of esports players wasn't too long. After all, hand speed and age mattered. Chapter 1074. When is Almighty Yun leaving? After a long while, someone asked. Lin Feng had expected such an atmosphere, but now that it was like this, he felt even worse. Half a month later. If he doesn't report, it will affect him too. Brother Mo and I will be flying in 3 days. Bo Jio placed the cola in her hand down. I wanted to ask how many locals or nearby people you can gather for the next 2 days so that everyone can come over to play and bid farewell. No one spoke. The lively atmosphere wouldn't come back. The president of the Feng Yun fan club tilted her head, her voice hoarse. I'll try my best. The person beside her patted her shoulder. At this moment, everyone felt the same. But at the same time, they understood that if you really liked someone, you should let him live his life according to his wishes. You shouldn't use your liking to make him stay. After the discussion was over, the end of the base meetup was brought forward. Under such circumstances, no one seemed to be in the mood to get high. The one who felt the worst was the president, who had followed Yunhu all the way. When she boarded the train, she didn't know why, but her throat felt uncomfortable. Actually, everyone knew. This might be the last time they would see their idol. It wasn't in real life. But in the future, there wouldn't be a shadow of that person in every competition. Even Supreme Alliance would gradually disappear from everyone's sight. If you had really liked a person or a group of people, you would understand how it felt. Hence, the painstaking organization sent a message to everyone who was here. They even said that they wanted everyone to come. They couldn't tell them the reason. But they knew that if they didn't come this time, it would be a lifelong regret. After Lin Feng and Bo Jio sent them to the car, they found a place and lit up a cigarette. *CK, I felt terrible when I saw her like that. Lin Feng caressed his hair, leaning against the wall, his eyes looking up at the sky. It would be great if I could play games for the rest of my life. But people have to grow up, right? For example, when you were young, you realized that this person was the most suitable person for you. When you come into contact with more outstanding people, you will realize that there is actually someone more suitable for you. Bo Jio tilted her head and paused. She threw the cigarette into the bin and wore her mask. She stuffed one hand into her pocket. No, it's because of that person. That person has appeared before. No matter how outstanding the people I will meet in the future, they won't be able to compare to him. That's right. She paused for a moment before continuing. What happened between you and Almighty Yun? Lin Feng lowered his eyes and took 2 puffs of his cigarette. He smiled and said, What can happen between us? It's just that my best friend suddenly left the country. I'm not used to it. Bo Jio wanted to see Lin Feng's expression, but all she could see was his handsome face, which was covered by his hair. She couldn't see anything. However, he vaguely felt that something was different. It was hard to describe. Chapter 1075. When Coco received the call, he was still in the midst of a live stream. When he heard the news, he switched off the channel. What did you say? Lin Feng is going to sing? He bit the bunny's ear. I don't want to participate, I strongly reject. Rejection is invalid, it's a group activity. We'll be near the club at midnight, come over with Feng Shang. Even though that was what Bo Jio said, she was still a little doubtful after the call ended. She glanced at Lin Feng. How bad is your singing for Coco to reject you? Lin Feng held her arm. Let me tell you, it's a long story. You'll see how good I am in a while. Bo Jio. Was singing badly a form of pride now? When they reached the KTV, Bo Jio realized that it wasn't because of his singing. Every line Lin Feng sang wasn't in tune. He should have been in tune, but for some reason he went up, making it difficult for Coco to find the tune again. Bo Jio finally understood what it meant to be in tune. To a listener, it was a form of destruction. How could he perform for the fans with such a standard? Bo Jio reached out and rubbed her temples. She thought for a moment and stopped playing the guitar. This won't do. Lin Feng arched a brow. Why do I find it nice? Look at what I sang just now, there's finally a tune. There are so many lines, but you only managed to tune one line. Bo Jio brought the guitar over with a smile. How did you do it? Lin Feng didn't speak. He had a feeling that if he spoke another word, Little Spade would smack him with his guitar. Coco placed his earplugs down and jumped over with the bunny in his arms. He was exhilarated. What did I say, Little Spade? You can't let this guy sing, there are so many twists and turns. Bo Jio glanced at them. How's your coordination? Black belt in Taekwondo. Lin Feng was best at martial arts with his legs. Bo Jio sized him up. Since you can't sing, you can dance. After you dance, you can even move your lips. Lin Feng. What the hell? What songs do youngsters like these days? Bo Jio scrolled back and forth in the KTV song selection area. Coco and Feng Shang looked at each other. You're the youngest here. Bo Jiu paused for a moment before smiling. That seems to be the case. Most of the Supreme Alliance's fans were similar to her. There were many students. It was a parting occasion, so there was no need to be so unhappy. Bo Jiu slid open the chart and listened to the top 3 songs. In the end, she settled on the middle song. This one. Coco, Lin Feng, and even Feng Shang froze at that moment. Their expressions were hard to describe. This song? Yes, this one. Bo Jiu made the final decision. The other 3 looked like they had nothing left to live for. It was all thanks to Weibo this time. When Bo Jiu returned to the Qin family, it was still peaceful. But it was only peaceful. Bo Jiu walked into the house. Auntie Zhang, who came out with a cup of tea, pointed behind her with her chin and said in a low voice, "The young master is in the study." In this situation, Bo Jiu could only turn and walk towards the study. In the study, Qin Mo was nearing the end of the call. On the other end, Magician insisted on an answer. "Boss, who exactly is this young Master Fu? He saved the entire ship single-handedly and knows how to make use of the surroundings to minimize the impact of the explosion. Who exactly is he? Do you really like him? Or are you attracted to his capabilities and want to recruit him?" Someone could vaguely be heard saying, "Is there something wrong with your brain? Boss's attitude clearly says that he likes her." I didn't expect the boss to be gay. If I had known earlier, I would have been more careful when I showered in the platoon. No, that's not right. If I had known the boss was gay, I would have been in a favorable position. Anyway, the boss is so handsome. No matter how I think about it, it's not a loss. Qin Mo allowed them to make a ruckus. In the end, he asked faintly, "Are you done?" 4 words. It was a solemn silence. You just have to remember to protect her family. As for other things, don't say anything. Even if Huang Guohua asks, there are some things I have to investigate. Alright, I'm hanging up, someone is coming in. Indeed, someone was coming. It was Bo Jiu. She was feeling a little guilty, but even so, she maintained her lazy attitude. "Brother Emoti." She looked so obedient. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster and placed his phone on the table. He leaned back, his left hand still wrapped in bandages. Since when did the wall-hopping student rely on a cat to divert her attention? The almighty sharp tongue was so artistic. How was she supposed to respond? "What are you and Lin Feng doing?" Qin Mo tapped the screen, probably because he had seen the message. Bo Jiu sat down, her gaze deep. She still looked like a rich young master even though her sitting posture wasn't proper. "We want to hold a farewell party." After hearing these 3 words, Qin Mo could almost guess the cause and effect. After a while, he opened his mouth. "Which day?" Bo Jiu replied, "Tomorrow." MMH. Bo Jiu assumed that was the end of the matter. But the next second, Qin Mo spoke again. "Next time if you want to go out, go through the front door. It won't be good if the grandpas in the courtyard see you when you climb the wall. What do you think?" Bo Jiu paused, feeling depressed again. Didn't he promise not to tell Brother Mo? She didn't expect him to be so passionate about gossip no matter how old he was. "Come here." Qin Mo looked at the youngster's expression and smiled. Bo Jiu arched a brow. She placed both hands on the table and leaned over. Qin Mo moved slightly and reached out, pressing the back of the youngster's head. It was a sweet kiss. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. The lights, the starry sky, and the reflection from the window landed in the study room. Everything seemed incomparably peaceful. It seemed that other than the sound of a heartbeat, nothing else could be heard. Even Madame Zhang, who was secretly observing, didn't enter again. The night grew darker. Even though both of them were in the Qin family's house. But they did live in 2 rooms. Ever since Bo Jiu moved in, Qin Mo seemed to have an extra job, which was to tell a certain someone a bedtime story. Qin Mo had always thought that this kind of thing was only enjoyed by children. But it was obvious that the person sleeping on the bed wasn't very mature mentally. Qin Mo reached out and pushed the silver hair in front of the youngster's forehead away. His gaze deepened. Then he walked out of the room and went to the courtyard. Very soon, a military vehicle drove over from the other side. There was a swoosh. A person came down from the car. That person was wearing glasses. Although he was wearing a white coat, there was no way to link such a devilish-looking man with the word doctor. "Boss, you asked me to come at this time. It's really strange. People who don't know might think that we have some unspeakable secret." Qin Mo glanced at him. He stuffed one hand into his pocket and stood tall. "If you want me to get in the car, leave some space for me." The psychiatrist sized him up. In the end, he couldn't see anything from that noble and handsome face. He sat back and took out a fountain pen and a pile of notes on his lap. Today just as he was about to speak, Chinamo interrupted him. That's right, it's very important, so I won't tell you anything about her. You don't have to think of ways to make me fall asleep. After all, this is a little difficult for you. The psychiatrist gritted his teeth and kept the pen. Honestly, he really wanted to resign and coach the new recruits in the army. Why did he have to come to his young master to suffer? Then tell me what you want to tell me. The psychiatrist had already given up. But he didn't completely give up. After all, no matter what was said, it could reflect a person's psychological state. But the answer he got was definitely a rejection. All these years, his boss's reaction was basically the same every time. Chinamo crossed his slender legs slightly. It was obvious that he was used to this. Sometimes, the psychiatrist would come to do psychological tests for him. I do have something that I want to hear your analysis of. The psychiatrist was about to write the word, no. But after hearing Chinmo's words, he suddenly straightened his body and almost dropped the fountain pen in his hand. Chinamo glanced at him and reminded him faintly, be professional, don't let me see your shock. The psychiatrist tried his best to control his micro-expressions, but his voice still sounded a little excited. What is it? It's about the thoughts of a high school student. The psychiatrist guessed for a long time but didn't expect such an answer. Was he kidding? This wasn't what he wanted to hear, okay? If a high school student still likes to listen to bedtime stories, why is that? Chinmo's side profile didn't change at all. The psychiatrist spread his hands. Isn't it easy to analyze? She can't forget her childhood and lacks a sense of security. This kind of person is a little complicated. It's not that she doesn't know anything, but she knows everything, but she has a pure land in her heart that she wants to keep. And it's very likely that her pure land is her childhood. In other words, the words childhood sweetheart are very important to her. Of course. The psychiatrist thought that this inference was very simple. Chinamo didn't say anything else. He just looked out of the window. His deep eyes seemed to have deepened. His fringe fell, blocking his expression. He had already done this analysis. However, when this kind of analysis was said by someone else, he still subconsciously reached out and pulled open his collar. Just like that, he sat in the car seat, his posture a bit more unruly than usual, but the corners of his mouth hid all traces of a smile. That was why she kept wanting to leave. This time, she went overseas with the intention of never coming back. Chapter 1076. There's one more thing. Chinamo glanced over. The psychiatrist adjusted his white coat and said righteously, Boss, do I look like someone who specializes in dealing with teenage psychological problems? This time it's me, Chinamo replied calmly. The psychiatrist lifted his eyes, his interest piqued. What? I don't know why images keep appearing in my head recently. Chinamo looked at him, his tone slow. Could it be because I like someone too much, causing me to think of the person when they were young? The psychiatrist's hand that was holding the pen paused, but he didn't show it. He flipped open the notebook, writing as he said, From a psychological perspective, if you like someone too much, you would indeed think of the person in all sorts of situations. There might even be things that you haven't done, but you would feel as though you have experienced them. Boss, you study psychology too, you should be clear about this. In reality, it wasn't just the person he liked, many people would have the same feeling as though they had thought of it before. Chinamo retracted his gaze and pulled the car door to the left. With a swoosh, the car door opened. Just as the psychiatrist was about to ask more questions, Chinamo had already alighted. The psychiatrist was helpless. He glanced at the incomplete form in front of him. It really wasn't suitable to hand it over to the higher-ups. But, if it was really like what Boss had said, would it mean that Boss would regain his lost memories? But regardless of whether it was the general or madam, they didn't want that memory to reappear. After all, no one would be able to forget that scene. Boss, who was covered in wounds, seemed to have lost his soul. It wasn't until he recovered from his illness and had a fever for 3 whole days that he lost some of his memories, that he returned to his current state. Selective amnesia. He must have suffered greatly for this to happen. Before they found out why Boss would feel pain, they wouldn't allow certain memories to trigger young master. After all, no one could guarantee what would happen. Since it was so painful, then they wouldn't do it. This was the decision they had made at that time. After all, if Boss had had a complete memory, he would have been accused of being hypnotized by a terrorist organization and would have faced a more serious interrogation. No one would have expected Boss to have selective amnesia. Just like when he was on a mission at the border, what exactly happened to him was still a mystery. The psychiatrist rubbed his temples. This was a huge matter and he had to report it to General Qin. This meant that he had to let boss bring people to complete the mission. As the night passed, it began to rain outside the courtyard. Qin Mo strolled around, looking elegant and refined. Soon, someone walked over, raising a black umbrella. In the future, ask them to wait for young Master Jiao to fall asleep, Qin Mo replied indifferently. That person nodded and didn't say much. The young master's trip was basically filled with chills. He didn't know what had happened. Qin Mo didn't say anything else. From the conversation just now, the only thing Qin Mo was sure of was that the doctor was lying, and he was lying about his situation. Chapter 1077. The next morning, Bojiu left early. This time she walked out of the main gate, using the excuse of walking the cat as an excuse to bring Princess along. Before she left, the old men who were out for a stroll greeted her. "Little friend, you're here again. You didn't climb over the wall this time. You did well the last time. He must be going back to get punished. Where are you going so early in the morning?" Bojiu experienced the enthusiasm of the old men in the courtyard. All of them were tough but still like old children. "I'm going out with Princess." Bojiu found a good excuse. She pulled down her jacket, revealing Princess's huge cat face. He was valiant and full of vigor and seriousness. Those who didn't know better would think that they were going to do something big. The old men at the side teased. "Does your brother know that you're walking the cat outside the courtyard?" Everyone thought he was Qin Chu's little brother. Bojiu replied calmly, "I know." She was happy that she finally didn't have to sneak out. At this moment, in the study room of the Qin family's house, the person who always followed Qin Mo appeared. "Young master, don't you need to follow young Master Jiao anymore?" "I don't need it here." Qin Mo used the knife and fork to cut the omelet in front of him, his voice calm. "She doesn't like to be restrained. Give her some freedom and she will know what she wants to do next." There was a double meaning in his words. The man glanced sideways at the book in his young master's hand. Sun Tzu's Art of War, retreat in order to advance. This was a good move. Bojiu was more relaxed now. After alighting from the taxi, she let Princess lie on her shoulder, letting him fend for himself. As a purebred cat that rarely left the military courtyard, Princess felt that such an outing was an insult to his bloodline. However, seeing that this strange kid had fed dried fish, it reluctantly looked at him for a while longer. Coco and Feng Shang hadn't expected Bojiu to bring a cat. One wave of teasing and another wave of teasing. In the end there was music. Princess wore a huge pancake face, watching the few humans jumping around in front of him. He patted the big fellow that always made sounds. During lunch it was finally quieter. The strange kid treated it well. After feeding it some dried fish, he picked up a lunch box and started eating. Are humans so poor now? Eating boxed meals? The four of them did eat boxed lunches. The place he brought the princess to was also a studio for practicing Korean dance. "People like us, can we form a group and officially debut?" Coco said as he ate. He didn't forget to look at himself in the mirror. "The more I look, the more handsome I look. I'm not going to look anymore. I'm afraid I'll lose myself in my own handsomeness." Feng Shang didn't say a word and hit the back of his head. Wake up." The two of them didn't use their mouths or their fists, they were just fooling around. Finally, he quietened down and glanced at Lin Feng, who was still trying to find his tone. Coco leaned against the huge mirror, his voice low. "Is Supreme Alliance really going to be like this in the future?" Feng Shang didn't say anything because he knew too well that all good things must come to an end. Some things couldn't be achieved just because you wanted them to. We're still here. Feng Shang's bad habit hadn't changed. Wait for everyone to come back. Coco slapped his long legs. "You're right, I'm rich anyway. We'll wait here for them to come back." Both of them knew he was just comforting himself. Yun, who was overseas, and Lin Feng was going to start a company in the future. Their captain was gone. How could they go back just like that? Everyone probably understood this point, which was why they were especially serious during practice. 5 p.m. The four of them had officially graduated. From the rhythm to the repetitive movements and the proficiency with the lyrics, they were no longer the people of the past. "Are you ready?" Bojiu asked the three beside her. Lin Feng pointed at his eyes. "Do I have to wear eyeliner?" "Stage makeup." Bojiu smiled devilishly. "The lighting is dim, we'll take the car over. It'll start at 6 p.m. Coco tugged at his shirt. "Am I too cute? Aren't you the type?" Bojiu glanced at the lit-up phone screen. "It's phony." The other three immediately shut their mouths, glancing up at themselves in the mirror. Hello. Bojo stood up. Is the venue ready? Alright, we're ready too, let's go. After hanging up the phone, the other three stood up together. Just then Fengyi said, from my perspective, it isn't high enough, it's lacking a highlight. Think about it, what highlight is there? Bojo turned on the hands-free mode, allowing everyone to hear his words. Lin Feng fiddled with his hair. As long as I don't have to wear female clothes, I can find any highlight. However, Lin Feng didn't expect the youngster to laugh lightly. The young man chuckled and added, I'll wear it. 2 words. Lin Feng almost tilted his head. He must be dreaming. Was this kid crazy? He must have lost sleep for the past 2 nights, causing his hearing to be impaired. Voluntarily wearing female clothes, what was going on? Let me tell you, little spade, don't take a step back in order to advance. Don't think that if you sacrifice yourself, I'll sacrifice myself with you. I refuse to cross-dress in this life, Lin Feng said majestically. Coco and Feng Shang, who were standing at the side, finally managed to shut their mouths. After all, they were innocent people, unlike Lin Feng who had so many twists and turns. Now there was only one thing left in their minds, and that was Spade Z Idol was going to cross-dress. As the person in question, Bojo didn't change much. She stuffed one hand into her pocket and used the other to pull Princess back into her arms. She smiled faintly as she walked out of the mirror. She had said that since she was going to leave, she had to leave openly. The other 3 glanced at each other, feeling as though the world was a little fantastical. The 4 of them stood tall, wearing the same uniform. When they walked out, they immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. Bojo was still wearing a mask. Just as she was about to enter the nanny van, a figure flashed past. It was probably because they were near the subway and there were many small vendors around. That person looked very familiar. Bojo stopped and glanced over. Little Spade, what are you looking at? Let's go. Coco patted Bojo's shoulder. Get in the car first, I'm going to buy something. A clear voice came through the mask, sounding a little nasal. Coco didn't have anything else to say. He put on his earphones and started revising the lyrics. Bojo walked towards the slightly hunched figure. The person hadn't seen her yet. Her hair was slightly white and there was a wooden drawer-like thing hanging in front of her. That was something all the vendors would come into contact with. There wasn't anything special on it, just a few cartons of cigarettes and a few bottles of mineral water. It was a pain to sell like this. Under the bright sun they had to walk back and forth. If someone saw them and needed cigarettes and water, they would buy 1 or 2 boxes. It was convenient for people who had just left the subway. Your change. The person lowered her head, a smile on her face. She was in her 50s and the bracelet on her hand seemed to have been sold. There were only some things that Bojo couldn't identify. The person lifted her head. Her eyes lit up when she recognized Bojo, but she couldn't call out her name. She asked in surprise, "Child, why are you here?" If it hadn't been for this person, her daughter wouldn't have won the lawsuit. Hence, even though Bojo was wearing a mask, she could still recognize the youngster. Bojo was carrying a cat in her arms. Her eyes were on the boxes of cigarettes. She took out her wallet, wanting to buy some. The person reached out to stop her. "No, I'm not selling these to you. How old are you to smoke?" She changed her direction and passed Bojo a bottle of mineral water. "The weather is so hot, drink some water." Bojo took it but didn't open it. When she opened her mouth, her throat moved. "I remember your daughter has some royalties." "Oh, about that." The man grabbed his clothes as if it was difficult for him to speak. In the end he said, "You see, those children are following me around working hard. I also have to spend money to fight the company. These few times, I also have to find people to prove the evidence. In the end, it's my own problem. I don't want others to say that I did it for money. That's why I insisted on holding on to this matter. Things are as they are, so." Bojo interrupted her. "I understand, Auntie." The person smiled, wiping the sweat off her forehead. "In the end, I still have to thank you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't know what to do. You should know that I can't read a single word." MMH. Bojo reached out to hold the mineral water bottle. "Is your friend calling you?" The person pointed at Coco and the others. "Hurry up and go. You seem to have taken good care of yourself, don't tan your hands." Bojo looked at her face. "Joe, remember, you have to always speak up for the weak. The weak aren't those who say they are pitiful and cry in front of others after hurting others. The real weak aren't those who can't seek justice after being hurt." Bojo stood there, the sunlight piercing her eyes. She understood. It had been so many days. From the county to the provincial capital, and then from the provincial capital to Jiang City. She had fought 3 lawsuits and every one of them had dragged on. How much money and effort had she expended? How many of them didn't sleep and wished that they could die immediately to calm themselves down? Then they would have to face a bunch of questions the next day. No one would care. In China there was a strange phenomenon. If a person wanted justice, there would always be a heart-wrenching explanation. This person must have done it for money. Why was she so troublesome? Everything was over. Could she get over it? In their eyes, one sentence was the end of the matter. But it was the last straw that crushed their hearts. Even until now there were still people who didn't mind stealing. No one would care. They didn't care about the lives of the people they had hurt. The truly weak would never make a sound. Because they wanted to seek justice in a dignified manner. Hence, even if they won the lawsuit, the mother would only ask for $1 of compensation. Because she knew that if she asked for more, people would say she did it for money. No matter how the public opinion changed. In the end, the other party would be clean. But in this industry, there were many people who copied the original work and used it to become popular. Then they would turn around and accuse the original work. After being discovered, they would pretend that nothing had happened. Anyway, there were people who supported them. But the people who were really hurt had to have no desires. Wasn't it right to take back what was taken from them? Wasn't it right for them to seek justice for their loved ones who were taken from them? If they had to talk about compensation, how much compensation would it take to return to a mother and a daughter? But it was these people who made every piece of justice that should have come too late. Bojio watched as the slightly bowed figure walked further and further away. Her hand holding the water bottle was a little numb. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about reuniting with the Almighty. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about staying in Jiang City. But at this moment, these thoughts were burned by the sunlight. She wanted to be Z. Return to where she should be. Do what she had to do. Swoosh. The car door was pulled shut. It interrupted her thoughts. Bojio sat in the front passenger seat and sent a message. Hoshino received it. It was a simple message, but it indicated her return. When Hoshino saw the message, he stopped playing the game. Because he knew. From today onwards, Z would be Z. She wouldn't be involved with young Master Fu anymore. Everything would return to normal. Bojio hid it so well that the people in the car didn't notice anything unusual. Or perhaps, everyone was focused on their own tasks. Besides, Bojio had been wearing her earphones ever since she boarded the car. It seemed like she was listening to music. Hence, no one paid attention to her. The nanny car followed the flow of traffic towards a technical school. Why did they choose this place for the farewell party? It was because there was an additional major in this technical school. Esports. In the future, Supreme Alliance's power would probably be chosen from here. The location was chosen by Feng Yi. Since it was a farewell party, it should be done with a bang. After all, Supreme Alliance had never been a team that kept a low profile. The situation had changed drastically in an instant. This was a gathering place for schools. Other than this technical school, there were number 1 middle school and number 2 middle school nearby. Those who studied this major were high schoolers. Everything had the authentic atmosphere of a school. It was a little like the welcoming party for new students at the start of school. The equipment was set up on the grass. There was a rack and a sound system. There were professionals doing sound tests. There were also many balloons hanging on the ground and a long buffet table filled with food. Every member's fan club president was arranging for them to enter. It was a spectacular scene. When some students passed by, their eyes were filled with envy. There was a metal fence. It was originally a place for people to play football, but now it was set up like this. Everyone wanted to watch it for a while. Who is coming? An event organized by a celebrity? They chose a technical school to organize it? That's impossible, right? I don't think so. I heard there are esports players coming. Chapter 1078. Strangely, the fans were all here. For members from Supreme Alliance weren't here. Many of them were looking for Spade Z but couldn't find her. Are we late? It can't be anything. There should be a traffic jam, let's wait. After all, it was different from the previous masquerade. This time, everyone didn't dress up exaggeratedly. It was just like a grand evening party in a school. But Feng Yi had replaced the host. As usual, he was dressed in a suit and looked like a smiling prince. He held the microphone in his hand and said, "There will be a special opening today." Just as he said this sentence, in the darkened area, all the lights lit up, shining on the corresponding balloons, adding an indescribable warmth. As for the opening, Feng Yi looked at the fans in front of him, then at Yun Hu and Qin Mo, his lips curving into a smile. Let's give the stage to the 4 members who aren't here yet. What did he mean? It wasn't just the fans who weren't sure what was going on. Even Yun-Hu and Uncle Ian, who were in the same team, couldn't understand. Chinamo stood in the middle, his bandaged hand in his trouser pocket, the other hand swirling the wine glass. When he heard Feng Yi's words, a glint flashed across his eyes, and he lifted his lids slightly to look up at Feng Yi. In that instant, all the surrounding lights were extinguished. Only the shattered stars were left in the middle of the stage. Swoosh! A beam of light fell, shining on the black piano. She saw a young man sitting there quietly. The young man's slender fingers were placed on the piano, and his handsome side profile exuded softness under the light. It was obvious that the youngster was dressed differently today, otherwise she wouldn't have a belt around her waist and a headset. But at this moment, no one would pay attention to the youngster's attire. Because the next second, the melodious sound of the piano rang out. It was very light, making it easy for people to hum along. It was obvious that the music had been rearranged. Just when many people felt that the theme was very familiar, the sound of the piano rang out. The youngster stood up suddenly, taking large strides towards the center. Her silver fringe was pulled back by her hair, revealing her beautiful forehead. The sound of the music changed. It was the same theme, but at this moment, it was bright and cheerful. It was also at that moment that the other three people walked up from the left and right sides. Each of them was wearing the same combat uniform and had a black earpiece on their left ear. Even their wrists were tied with the same black silk scarf. All of them gathered together, and the scene was so handsome that it was a little out of control. As they appeared, everyone held their breath. What are they doing? Before anyone could finish their words, Feng Shang opened his mouth. His voice was clear as he danced, giving people a sense of obedience. At such a young age, I still don't know what love is, but I was defeated by your sweet smile. Most importantly, the others did the same thing. At this moment, Coco and Feng Shang would switch their positions, continuing to sing. Every day after class, different timbre but equally pleasant to the ears. In addition, the four of them were singing and dancing at the same time. Chapter 1079. The expression on every single fan's face changed. Even the students who were sitting by the railing stood up at this moment. Some fans were so agitated that they didn't know what to do. They reached out to hold on to the people beside them. Some pulled out their phones. Most of them covered their mouths as they pressed the recording button. The stars shone brightly. Besides the black scarf, Bojio had something else on her wrist. Everyone had a glowing black wristband. As they danced, they looked even more handsome. Every single person who stuttered wouldn't stutter when they sang. This was probably common sense. Feng Shang's voice was completely unleashed at this moment. Even the fact that Lin Feng was out of tune wasn't a problem anymore. Because during the chorus, the four of them moved in unison. Bojio's voice appeared at this moment. I just want to give you my love. I still don't know if this is considered love. I want to share my happiness with you. I want to give you a shoulder when I'm sad. This is the first time I'm nervous for someone. They had rearranged the dance. Hence, when Bojio sang this sentence, she tilted her head and paused. She tilted her body slightly, a mischievous smile on her lips. Her silver hair fell down as she formed the shape of a heart with both of her hands. Then she formed the shape of a one. When Chinamo saw this scene, his hand that was swirling the wine glass froze. Feng Yi stood at the side, his head aching slightly. Couldn't they have given a heads up about such deliberate actions? Was Little Spade afraid that no one would know about the CP issue? Fortunately, the pause wasn't long. They were dancing after all. After Bojio finished singing, she retreated to the left. Lin Feng stood at the front. He formed the same heart shape, but his style was different from Bojio's. His handsome face was the best plus. His voice was accompanied by the harmony at the side. Many people couldn't help but sing along. They raised their hands and swayed their bodies lightly. The atmosphere was extremely high. I really want to give you my love. It's only been a few weeks. My mood is bad because you aren't around. A ray of warm light shines down. I can't help but look forward to it. Because of love. With the end of the last sentence, countless colorful balloons floated out from the stage. Only 4 people were left on the stage. Their chests rose and fell slightly, and they couldn't speak for the time being. Because they had just finished dancing, even their hair seemed lighter than usual, but they were smiling brightly. Bojio's devilish aura hadn't changed much. But compared to her devilish aura, after singing such an adorable song, she bent over and placed Princess on her shoulder, looking even cooler and more handsome. Sweat slid down the young man's forehead and landed on his chin. His silver hair was already a little wet from dancing, but it didn't affect him much. Instead, it added a sense of unruliness to him. The four of them looked at each other and said, "I'll give you the best love." Then they bowed in unison. At that moment, the screams were uncontrollable. Some people even felt that it was a pity that the four of them didn't become stars. They were all fair and clean, but each had their own merits. How does it feel to listen to your favorite esports god sing? The live version of the handsome dance. It was mainly a heart gesture. Even if the heart wasn't for them, it was enough for everyone to cheer for a while. The passionate atmosphere couldn't be calmed down. Even Yun, who was in disbelief. After all, he was aware of Lin Feng's singing skills. But when he saw that person's side profile was covered in a thin layer of sweat, he smiled brightly, revealing his beautiful teeth as he walked towards him. Once again, Yun, who felt his heart beating wildly, even his blood vessels were getting heated. The repeated tremors made him unable to control himself. He reached out and grabbed Lin Feng's wrist. The moment Lin Feng came down from the stage, he hadn't even stabilized his breathing when he was dragged backstage by Yun Hu. The so-called backstage was just a temporary place. But even if it was temporary, there was a door and a small changing room. Before Lin Feng could react, he was already pressed against the wall. "Are you an idiot?" Yun Hu's voice sounded extremely deep. "What the hell?" Lin Feng was about to explode again. He admitted that his singing wasn't good, but he didn't have to be an idiot, right? "Dressed like this," Yun Hu continued. "And singing such a song." Lin Feng glared. "Wait a minute, what's wrong with what I'm wearing? Why do I look like I'm naked when I'm with you?" *CK move aside. Yun Hu didn't move. Lin Feng reached out to push him. But his hand was pulled back, followed by a turn and a kiss. No one could escape from such a kiss. It was as though he wanted to tear him apart and devour him. His thin lips were pried open and he moved around inside, sucking heavily. A numbing sensation assaulted him. Since it was an enclosed environment, they could even hear the sound of kissing. Lin Feng even forgot to make a move. Anyone who was treated in such a way would have their mind go blank. His head was buzzing and his thoughts were all in a mess. There was also an abnormal breathing sound. Yun Hu was the one who ended the kiss. He seemed to have regained his rationality, forcefully pulling himself away from the sweet taste. He leaned his head against Lin Feng's left shoulder, his voice hoarse. "I like you so much that I'm about to explode. So this is the last time. Treat it as a gift to send me off. It's really the last time." Lin Feng's eyes widened. Lin Feng didn't speak, his face blank. Only his slightly red lips showed his current state. Yun Hu straightened his back. The two of them fell into silence. It was probably because of what happened the previous time. It still didn't pass. Hence, even now they didn't know how to break the news. The youngster, who had been watching from start to end, noticed that the two of them weren't moving and the atmosphere seemed to be frozen. She had originally intended to guard the door, but when she glanced down at her watch, it was about time. She reached out and knocked on the wooden door of the fitting room, even though she was already inside. Lin Feng and Yun Hu paused, turning towards the source of the sound. They didn't know if they should heave a sigh of relief or be annoyed. Why was little Spade beside them? Bo Jio expressed that she wasn't going to take the blame. They had discussed beforehand that she would be wearing female clothing today. The moment Lin Feng met the youngster's gaze, he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth, about to speak. Bo Jio was still hugging Princess, leaning against the wall, a faint smile on her face. "Rather than the fitting room, you can find a car. After all, there isn't a third wheel in the car." Cough. Lin Feng decided not to speak. With the current situation, there was no way he could clear his name. Yun Hu stuffed a hand into his pocket, his voice calm. "It isn't what you think, we are just fooling around." Who would be fooling around with kissing? Bo Jio arched a brow. Yun Hu walked over, leaving behind only one sentence. "You straight?" Bo Jio didn't reply since she felt that the atmosphere between them wasn't the same as before. After Lin Feng heard Yun Hu's explanation, he smiled. "Yes, we are just fooling around." His voice was obviously much lower. Bo Jio didn't have time to ask. Lin Feng spoke again. "Which set of female clothing are you going to wear?" He was changing the topic. Bo Jio understood. She glanced back and forth between the two of them, feeling that something was wrong between them. When Yun Hu heard this, he paused in his tracks as though there was something wrong with his ears. "You're going to cross-dress?" I am." Bo Jio walked over, twisting open a part that was covered. It was a pure black long dress that hung down, reaching her ankles. For some reason, Lin Feng felt that the dress looked a little familiar. But he didn't have time to think. Yun Hu asked, Does Captain know about your cross-dressing? No. Bojo smiled. If I don't wear it, Senior Lin will have to. Was that the logic? When did he say that? Yunhu was still frowning. Lin Feng was already resisting. Don't even think about making me wear female clothing again. That's why I will wear it. Bojo lifted the dress, her movements swift. Even if you are leaving, you have to be handsome, don't you think so? Lin Feng didn't understand why the definition of handsomeness was defined by cross-dressing. But that didn't stop him from supporting Little Spade's decision. He hadn't seen Little Spade in female clothing the previous time. This time he had to see what Little Spade looked like. Alright, I'm going to change. If Almighty Yun wants to continue with Senior Lin, you can find another place. Bojo smiled. Her words successfully made Lin Feng flush. Yun, who could only remain silent. They walked out of the changing room together. Coco ran over. When he saw the two of them, he arched a brow at Lin Feng. What's wrong with your mouth? Mouth? Lin Feng seemed to have realized something. He changed his lines. It should be the hot pot in the afternoon and the spicy pot in the afterlife. Coco hugged his rabbit, muttering, it wasn't that fresh during the dance. Does the chili have a delayed reaction? Lin Feng couldn't let him continue thinking. What are you doing here? I'm looking for Little Spade. Is he wearing female clothing? I told the fans that we are going to have a big move later. Coco couldn't hide the excitement in his voice. Lin Feng wiped the sweat off his forehead. He finally managed to divert his attention. Little Spade has already changed. He locked the door from the inside and asked us to wait outside. That's good. What do you think Captain's expression will be when he sees Little Spade in female clothing? Aha, I really want to see it. Yunhu turned and glanced at the tightly shut door. He didn't tell the two simple-minded fellows that their captain had seen Little Spade in female attire. But this time, Captain didn't seem to know about it. Chapter 1080. In the fitting room, the youngster bent over and took off her t-shirt. The reflection in the mirror was the white bandage wrapped around her chest. Since it was covered, the Z logo wasn't visible. But it was obvious that after the bandage was removed, her perky curves could be seen. Her elegant neck matched with her beautiful white collarbone, which slowly blossomed, giving off a kind of enchanting bewitchment. Bojo glanced sideways at the collagen Lin Feng had provided. She smiled and threw it into the bag. Her left hand moved and she turned to buckle something behind her back. All he could see was a vast expanse of white. Once the long dress was on, Bojo glanced up at the mirror. She placed the long curly hair on her head and used a black clip to secure it. The energetic pretty youngster instantly turned into a cold young lady with the demeanor of a queen. Bojo held a silver electronic lighter in her hand. She lit a cigarette and took 2 puffs. Then she remembered that the Almighty had mentioned quitting smoking. She extinguished the cigarette lazily. She glanced at herself in the mirror. Dressing up was a piece of cake for her. She didn't need much makeup. She just needed a mascara to lift her eyelashes and a bright red lipstick. She glanced at the person in the mirror. She had the typical vibe of a witch. Princess frowned as he watched from the side. He looked at Bojo cautiously. Meow, who could tell him what this strange youngster was up to today? Bojo reached out and picked it up, hugging it in her arms. She wore a black dress that reached her ankles and carried a snow-white cat in her arms. Bojo looked more like a bloodling girl from a manga. Outside the fitting room. After the dance, the other 3 had already picked up their glasses and started to drink. Even Lin Feng, who had disappeared to God knows where, lowered his head to avoid some people's gazes. The only one who didn't appear was Big Spade. The fans weren't the only ones looking for him. Chinamo sat there with his long legs crossed. He tapped the wine glass with his fingers and looked at Coco. Where is she? Coco was still imagining his captain's reaction when he saw Little Spade in female clothing. He didn't expect his captain to suddenly ask him, so he was a little confused. Ever since you got off the stage, you haven't been eating or drinking. You've been staring at me. What are you looking at? Coco shuddered at the question. How could he forget that his captain had always been good at reading people's minds? What are you hiding from me? Chinamo swirled his wine glass and took a sip. When he glanced over, his gaze was faint. Coco couldn't resist the pressure and was about to tell the truth. An uproar could be heard from the crowd on the left. Here it comes. Coco's eyes lit up. He raised his head and looked in the direction of the voice. Lin Feng was also watching. He was watching from a close distance because the person who had caused the commotion was already in front of him. At this moment, when Lin Feng saw the figure with fluttering long hair, he looked like he was about to collapse. He couldn't help but say, F***ck, why is it this person again? Captain will probably be acting weird again. If Captain lets little Spade down again, it won't be right. Even though Lin Feng's memory wasn't good, he could still recognize this person. Chapter 1081. It had to be said that Lin Feng's gaze was hostile, and it was very obvious. Furthermore, he had said those words. Yun, who stood at the side. He raised his right hand and held his forehead gently. He had thought that this fellow would go offline occasionally. But he hadn't expected him to go offline so badly. How many times had it been? But he still couldn't tell anything. In fact, Lin Feng did find the girl familiar, but he had never associated her with Spade. After all, the current Bo Jio was clearly different from her short-haired self. When her fair fingers were placed on the cat's head, her silky black hair was scattered on both sides, and her porcelain-like shoulders were slightly exposed. Her makeup was extremely beautiful, which was why the person standing in front of her looked like a noble from a castle when she smiled. Bo Jio heard Lin Feng's words. She had come to look for them. She smiled. From what you said, you seem to hate me. As long as you can tell. Lin Feng had a stubborn personality. He stuffed a hand into his pocket, looking arrogant as though he couldn't stand the sight of her. Bo Jio arched a brow, a playful look in her eyes as she took a step forward. Lin Feng called out, "Don't come over, don't you know it's improper for men and women to touch each other?" Bo Jio stilled, but in that instant she lowered her body, still carrying Princess. She bent down, her side profile stunning, especially the faint smile on her face. "Senior Lin, if you continue to hide, I'm going to tell Coco and the rest about your kiss with Almighty Yun." Lin Feng stilled. Lin Feng was stunned for a moment. Then his eyes widened. His clear eyes were filled with disbelief. How did it feel to be struck by lightning? How did it feel to be struck by lightning? That was how he felt right now. Lin Feng's mouth seemed to be stuttering, he couldn't even speak properly. "Xiao Xiao." After stuttering for a long while, he said like a man, F***ck. Why is it you? This isn't logical. F***ck. Lin Feng's 3 consecutive curses were enough to explain his current mood. He could never have imagined that the girl he had always mentioned in front of Little Spade, the girl whom he suspected Captain liked, would be Little Spade herself. This wave was really awkward. Bo Jio straightened, the smile still on her face. Many people looked over. It was probably because of Lin Feng's reaction. Everyone was curious about who the girl was. Why was she hugging the cat that Big Spade had been hugging? Until the man tilted his head, revealing the black diamond earring. Only then did some of the fans stop what they were doing. They didn't dare to think further. However, the air around them seemed to have frozen. Everyone covered their mouths. With such a huge commotion, Chinamo would definitely look over. In the crowd, that person was wearing a long black dress. Her fingers were stroking the princess's head. Her eyes were black and beautiful. It was as if all the lights in the surroundings were reflected in her eyes. That person looked up uneasily. The 2 men's eyes met. Bo Jio smiled faintly, her long hair flowing down, the mole at the corner of her eyes glistening. At that moment, there was only one sentence in Qin Mo's mind. Chapter 1082. What are you looking at? Yin Weiyao was the last to arrive. His middle-aged man attire seemed out of place. He had a cigarette in his mouth as he followed Qin Mo's line of sight. It was rare to see Qin Mo like this. She hadn't expected to see a familiar face. The cigarette in her mouth loosened. She turned back to look at Qin Mo, only to see that his eyes were as deep as the waves of the sea, bottomless. Princess leaped down from her arms, circling towards Qin Mo. Qin Mo sat there, holding the white cat up. When he turned towards Bo Jio, he said in a deep voice, "Come here." Bo Jio smiled. She had to admit that the Almighty's expression had pleased her. She finally understood why the Almighty liked to see others shocked. Seeing his little secretary being shocked was also a very satisfying thing. Bo Jio lifted her legs and walked over. Qin Mo stood up, lifting his black jacket and covering her head. Before she could react, Qin Mo stood up. She was forcefully pulled into someone's embrace. The next moment, the familiar scent of mint and tobacco entered her nose. It seeped in. The back of her neck was cupped, gently kneading and pressing. Her thin lips touched a slight coldness. Bo Jio stilled. It wasn't just Bo Jio. Everyone in the surroundings froze. Feng Yi only had one reaction. How was he going to answer to the media and fans? How dare Qin Mo kiss her in such an occasion? No one had expected Qin Mo to kiss her in such a manner. Even though he had covered her, everyone present knew what he was doing. His left hand was still wrapped in a white bandage. His handsome face was tilted. When he kissed her, the curve of his chin was stretched. His handsome posture made everyone's hearts race. The fans present had never imagined that there would be a day when their hearts would race when they saw someone kissing. But that was it. Their hearts were about to jump out of their chests when they saw the scene. It wasn't a kiss that could be easily moved away. Instead, he acted as if there was no one else around and announced in a domineering manner. It was as though he was using this method to tell everyone that the person in his arms was his. The moment their lips touched, Wuxia hadn't expected it. After he ended the kiss, he looked at her. His ears were filled with chaotic screams and gasps of disbelief. Wuxia reached out and held herself down. Her breathing was unstable, but she still looked devilish. She leaned over and kissed him again. The situation was somewhat out of control. After all, some fans couldn't accept it. Qin Mo knew there would be people who couldn't accept it. But he didn't need to care who he was with and who he kissed. Some of Spade Z's fans had already recognized her as their Spade Z. After all, some of them had already known the secret of Big Spade being a girl during the competition. However, when he saw it with his own eyes, his heart was still very different. The person who waved the mouse single-handedly completed countless first kills and showed off the entire audience. It really was a girl. And such a beautiful girl at that. And she and Almighty Qin were real. Perhaps it had always been true. Those interactions on Weibo, those ambiguous clues. She could still remember the pink flush that rose from the bottom of her heart when the bed photo incident happened. It wasn't their imagination. It could even be said that their imagination wasn't even a tenth of the two of them. When Spade Z's fans looked at Wuxia, they smiled sincerely. But there were other fans. Some didn't think Wuxia was a girl. They didn't recognize the person that Almighty Qin had kissed in public. When they realized that it might be Spade Z, everyone had a different expression. What exactly was going on? Were the two of them really gay? What was with Spade Z cross-dressing? It wasn't easy to control. Feng Yi had to step up as his manager. This was probably Supreme Alliance's style. He thought of many reasons to appease the fans, but he didn't fabricate any of them. Instead, he explained clearly, Big Spade gave everyone a surprise. He used cross-dressing to bid farewell to everyone. As for the relationship between the team members, it is as you can see. At this moment, he didn't seem to care about what the fans really wanted. Actually, it was clear that if they were just a couple, they might be cute. But if you were really gay, they might not continue to be cute. But no matter what, this was Supreme Alliance. The Supreme Alliance that had many problems. How did it feel to have a heart that was about to explode? It was so sweet that it was like honey. For the fans who liked this pair, it was simply sugar among sugar. To the other fans, they would rather not have attended this farewell party. Of course, most of them liked it. Because all the presidents of the fan club only said one sentence to those people. This is a farewell party, we might never see Supreme Alliance with such a lineup again. When they heard this sentence, the other group of fans quietened down. They lifted their eyes and looked over in the direction of the voice. The clothes they were wearing weren't uniform. It wasn't like when they were playing games, where they would look at the same uniform and feel their blood boil. There was Shui Yao Yao, Coco, Feng Shang, Yin Wuyao, Lin Feng, Yun Hu, Spade Z, Almighty Qin. After today, Supreme Alliance would be 3 people short. The Feng Yun CP was about to break up. Almighty Qin's hand was badly injured and he might not be able to play games anymore. They seemed to have forgotten. What was their initial intention when they fell in love with these people? They wanted to see them play another game, even if it was just one game. There would always be that person in countless nights in your life, telling you that in this world, there were things that could be obtained with hard work. That person was Shui Yao Yao, who they had watched grow up. That person was Almighty Qin, who had turned the tide with his own strength. That person was the youngster who stood in front of the huge screen, his head slightly drooping because he had lost a game. No matter who they were with, it seemed to be their freedom. Especially when the two of them stood together, not afraid of anyone's gaze, their foreheads touching, a light smile at the corner of their lips. Some of the fans were relieved. They had never seen Almighty Qin smile like this, so gentle that it could melt all the ice and snow. He was simply looking at someone. Scorching, deep, and doting, all of it finally turned into him pulling that person into his arms. With a faint smile he said, "Little hooligan." Wuxia. Who kissed first. This was probably how love should be. It had nothing to do with gender. Chapter 1083. The situation was gradually under control. When it was about time, Feng Yi instructed the president of the fan club to guide the fans out of the venue. It was impossible for Bojio not to be photographed. After all, in such an environment, many things couldn't be avoided. Coupled with her cross-dressing appearance, it was truly breathtaking. The people who posted the photos were loyal Supreme Alliance fans. Basically, they were like this. Initially, when I saw Lin Feng's cross-dressing photo, I didn't think there would be a man more suited to cross-dressing than him. But now that I saw Big Spade, I realized what it meant by the pupil surpassing the master. She's so beautiful. Sob, sob, sob. Once such a photo was exposed, there would definitely be many people reposting it. The fans were interesting, tagging Lin Feng every time they reposted it. Gradually, the topic of discussion shifted from Spade Z being the only one cross-dressing to the fact that Supreme Alliance was probably the most cross-dressing team out of all the esports teams. Moreover, their outfits were outstanding. The other teams also reposted the photos of Spade Z cross-dressing. Xiangnan's Zhao Sanpang said directly, "What the F asterisk CK? Little Spade, tell me if you have an older or younger sister. If you do, tell me your contact details now." It was probably because of his words that she was roused up. Many experts in the esports industry followed suit. Their goal was to find Spade Z's older or younger sister as their girlfriend. Such discussions spread rapidly on the internet. The popularity of the repost was obvious. There was another comment. "I have two goddesses now, one is Goddess Luoluo and the other is Big Spade. My goddess, oh no, my almighty is really beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that." As the other party involved, Luoluo replied and tagged Bojio. "Where did you buy the dress? Hurry and introduce me to the shop. In the future you can wear this when we go shopping. No one will think you're a man." Someone immediately replied, for example, "My idol and goddess are going shopping together," and so on. Feng Yi didn't bother about it since it would be more natural to discuss in such a manner. Even if the media asked, he could reply normally, "It's a farewell party." He cross-dressed to bid farewell to his fans. He wouldn't say anything else. Some of the media knew about Lin Feng cross-dressing. Spade Z wouldn't find it strange anymore. In fact, even the members of Supreme Alliance didn't think too deeply about it. This could be seen from Lin Feng's performance. He sized her up, caressing his chin. Then he lifted his arm and placed it on her shoulder. "I have to say, you're still the best when it comes to cross-dressing. I, Lin Feng, admit defeat. From now on, I'll give you the title of the prettiest girl. You're so beautiful it's suitable." Bojio arched a brow and was about to speak. Lin Feng heard a cold voice by his ear. "You don't want your hand anymore?" That kind of voice, even if it wasn't very close, would still make people feel pressured. Lin Feng's back stiffened. Why didn't anyone tell him that the captain was back? Chinamo had something to deal with just now. After all, there were still some details that needed to be discussed on Feng Yi's side. Chinamo didn't expect that someone would cause trouble for him after he left for a short while. Lin Feng's scalp turned numb. He gulped and quickly retracted his hand, trying his best to act as though nothing had happened. Chinamo walked over, holding onto the youngster's wrist naturally. His handsome side profile was emotionless as he said, "Let's go." The other members of Supreme Alliance had already learned how to survive from the wave of kisses. They tried their best not to look at their captain and Little Spade when they were together. But, even so, the captain didn't have any intention of hiding it at all, holding hands at every turn. Coco and Feng Shang glanced at each other. They retracted their gaze in unison, pretending that they weren't looking at holding hands but at the sky. Other than Shui Yaoyao, everyone in the team felt that their captain had turned completely gay this time. Shui Yaoyao, who knew the entire truth, scratched her palm, a smile on her face. Her Highness Jiao dressed as a girl once and everyone was already in such a state. If Coco and Feng Shang found out that Her Highness Jiao was actually a girl, who knew how stunned they would be? When Chinamo said, "Let's go," he was referring to everyone. After the farewell there was a gathering for the team. This was good. Since it was made public, there was no need for him to have any scruples. Even though the members of Supreme Alliance hadn't felt that their captain had any worries in the past, at least he wouldn't act like he was flaunting his affection. This was probably because Little Spade was dressed as a girl. The two of them were just sitting there casually. One of Chinmo's hands was placed on the back of Bojio's chair while the other was pouring a glass of wine. There was an indescribable sense of intimacy. Lin Feng understood that it wouldn't be easy for him to have a brotherly chat with Little Spade. Hence, he took out his phone, lowering his head to type a message. "Tell me the truth. Have you already chased after Captain a long time ago?" Bojio replied instantly with an emoticon of a soldier smoking. Lin Feng shook his head. Public morals are getting worse by the day. Just as she was about to reply, To solidify her position as a beauty, the Almighty snatched her phone away from her. There wasn't any reaction from Bojio. Lin Feng lowered his head, wanting to bury his face into the bowl as he shoved the rice into his mouth. Qin Mo glanced at the youngster's reply before keeping his phone casually. When did you woo me? Why didn't I know? Bojio choked, a serious expression on her face. Brother Mo, it must be because you aren't sensitive in this aspect. Is that so? Qin Mo placed his chopsticks down, shifting his gaze over. Perhaps you've wooed too many people, so I'm not as sensitive anymore. Bojio. Should she admit defeat this time? She felt as though the Almighty wasn't in a good mood after scrolling through Weibo. Was it an illusion? Qin Mo wasn't in a bad mood, but when he looked at the person in front of him, he felt an indescribable urge to possess her. He wasn't willing to share her secret with anyone else, much less when she was dressed as a girl. At this moment, the Almighty didn't want to admit that he was jealous after reading the news about not caring about Bojio's gender and wanting to marry her. This person originally belonged to him. Qin Mo's gaze deepened. When he turned to speak, his voice was so soft that only the two of them could hear. In the future, don't dress like this outside. Bojio suddenly understood something, breaking into a smile. She held onto Qin Mo's hand under the table, smiling devilishly. No problem. This was the way to pacify a jealous little secretary. Qin Mo paused, following the direction of her hand. She was indeed worthy of her little gangster title. It was probably because of the good atmosphere. Coco took the opportunity to say, the collagen sticker Lin Feng bought is really good. It looks so real. If I didn't know that it was Little Spade, I would have thought that it was a girl from somewhere. That depends on the person. Lin Feng smiled. Little Spade, why don't you go to the washroom and remove everything that needs to be removed? We can let them study the artifact of cross-dressing, the collagen sticker. At this point, Shui Yaoyao's face was a little red. She basically understood what they were talking about and was worried that there would be other problems. After all, Her Highness Jiao still had that secret. No one expected it. Dressed in a long black dress, Bojio lifted her left hand, supporting the side of her face. She smiled and said, I didn't use it. Didn't use it? What did she mean? Everyone had a different reaction. Qin Mo's reaction was probably the calmest. His hand paused for a moment before returning to his nonchalant self. On the other hand, Shui Yaoyao seemed to understand what Her Highness Jiao was trying to do. Her eyes shook violently. Only Feng Shang didn't understand, his face full of question marks. Yin Wuyao was leaning his head to light his cigarette. When he heard that, he turned to look at Bojio. Lin Feng's gaze moved down. He seemed to be thinking for a moment. Then realization dawned on his face. Did you buy a better disguise yourself? Yun, who was sitting beside him. From a certain perspective, he didn't think that was Little Spade's intention. No, Bojio spoke again. Her voice was neither soft nor heavy, carrying the unique quality of a youngster, clear and pleasant. I didn't use anything. You didn't use anything. At this moment, Lin Feng and Coco seemed to have realized something. The chopsticks in their hands fell onto the wooden table with a thud. Both of their expressions seemed to be in sync with each other. Nothing had been used. How could that place be round? The only explanation was, no, how was that possible? However, another voice rang out. This time it went straight to the heart. Let me reintroduce myself. Spade Z, gender female, preference male. Bojio's face was calm. I didn't tell you previously due to some reasons. Now that the National League has ended, it's time to tell you this secret that I haven't told you all. It has to do with my family background. I have been dressing as a man since I was young. After she said those words, the entire private room in the restaurant went silent. Even the usually calm Yun, who lifted his lids in disbelief. Not to mention the trio who dropped their chopsticks on the table one after another. Coco and Feng Shang's mouths were wide open. Lin Feng's outstretched hand was petrified. It had only been 3 hours, but he had been struck twice by the heavenly thunder. Little Spade was a girl? He put his hand on her shoulder and called her brother. The good brother who was researching on how to turn a straight man gay, Pui, was actually a girl? F***ck. Most importantly, he used the mindset of an experienced person to teach him how to pick up girls. Even though he had never done it before, wasn't that what straight men talked about? In that instant, Yin Wuyao had almost forgotten to smoke. After all, even he couldn't imagine that the youngster who had pulled him out of his slumber and told him to shock the esports world with a bang was a girl. He was the first person to see the young Jinren operate. Nimble and ever-changing movements. A frightening presence. A beautiful and invincible kill. Hand speed, technique, thought process, ambush and unpredictable attacking methods. The FC King of Zone C. Even now that record was still in the archives and no one could break it. The person who made the professional players tremble in fear, the person who really changed the esports circle, was actually a girl. No one could have imagined it. If anyone else knew about this, the entire esports industry would probably explode. Feng Shang opened his mouth for a long time but still couldn't find his voice. His idol was a girl. He had always thought that the manliest person in his life was his idol, but it was a girl. Wait a minute, I am a little nervous. Feng Shang felt that the weather was too hot and he was showing signs of a heat stroke. Coco didn't want to say anything else, he bit down on his rabbit's ear. He remembered the first time he met Spade Z, she had been so cold in the game that she didn't even bother to look at him. At that time he felt that this guy was really cool since he had a shocking number of fans. And he had always thought that this guy was gay, which was why he kept pestering his captain. At this moment he finally understood. No wonder people always said that young Master Fu liked guys. That was because she was a woman. Coco couldn't describe his feelings at this moment. He felt that he needed to calm down. After all, he had been beaten up by a girl in the game before, it was really annoying. But on second thought, he wasn't the only one who had been beaten up. If Zhao Sanpeng and the others found out about this, they would probably be petrified. Yun, who reached for a wine glass and touched hers. To us, you will always be Spade Z regardless of gender. Yes. Lin Feng slapped his thigh, wanting to put his hand on her shoulder out of habit. When he met Qin Mo's gaze, he straightened, his expression incomparably serious. But little Spade, you have to let me digest this fact. After all, it's really inappropriate for men and women to touch each other in the future. Yin Wuya was still young after all. He held his glass and smiled. Cheers to our team having a second female member. I really didn't expect this, little captain. This glass of wine had to be drunk. Bojio stood up, holding the wine glass in one hand. She was unprecedentedly serious, even her gaze was deep. This should be a toast to everyone. Thank you for giving me a chance to fight side by side, which I have never had before. Chapter 1084. At the start, when they had found out that the person was a girl, everyone's expression was so shocked that they seemed to have swallowed their keyboards. Hence, when Coco and Lin Feng glanced at Bojio, the image of her roaming around in the wilderness, killing her opponents alone. She didn't have to worry about their finances at all. They didn't have to worry about not being able to win in the team battle. At the start, that person was like a shadow hidden among them, killing the moment she appeared. In the end, with a long spear, she jumped 3 times in a row, breaking the enemy's rhythm. If Supreme Alliance didn't have Big Spade, even if they had Captain, they wouldn't have one. When Captain had gone overseas for treatment, it was because of this person who had shouldered all the pressure, be it from the opponents or the fans, that Supreme Alliance hadn't been without a pillar. This was their vice-captain. This was the FC King of Zone C with beautiful positioning, skillful maneuvers, shocking hand speed, the one who left nothing behind wherever he went. No matter what, they couldn't forget that they had lost together, lowered their heads in disappointment, charged out of the encirclement together, revived from the revival match and fought again. To fight side by side. Lin Feng was the first to touch Bojio's wine glass. At this moment, gender didn't seem to matter much. Yin Wuya was the second. As an uncle, he smiled faintly. To meet again in the future. Feng Shang didn't know how to speak, he had an adorable expression as he touched the glass. Perhaps everyone knew that this might be the Supreme Alliance's last reunion. Yin, who was going overseas. The others had their own matters to attend to. Shui Yaoyao's eyes were red, but when everyone raised their glasses, she smiled. To meet again in the future. Coco and Yun, who followed. Chinamo raised his glass. Chinamo was the last to stand. His face was handsome, noble as ever, as though he was still wearing his exclusive Supreme Alliance uniform. His clothes fluttered in the wind, his aura released. To Supreme Alliance. To Supreme Alliance. It was just 3 simple words, but it caused ripples in everyone's eyes. Perhaps many years later, they would forget the number of matches they had won, the pain they had suffered because of a single loss. But they couldn't forget this feeling. They were a part of Supreme Alliance. Would always be so. They were destined to part on this day. After dinner, it was almost midnight. Yun Hu and Lin Feng drank and hailed a cab back. However, it was still different from before. In the past, both of them would sit in the back seat. This time, one person sat in the front passenger seat while the other sat in the back seat. Lin Feng could hear Yunhu's phone ringing. He seemed to be sending a WeChat message to someone. He could vaguely hear that it was a boy on the other end. Perhaps because of the alcohol, Lin Feng leaned his head against the wall and didn't say a word. Without the members of the team, the interaction between the two of them was a little dry. Lin Feng also knew that his desire to speak gradually disappeared when he saw the other person holding the phone and talking to the other side of the phone. He guessed that it should be the boy from the other day. In that case, the two of them had basically confirmed their relationship. From the sounds of it, they were also discussing their lives abroad. Lin Feng tilted his head and looked out the window as if he had put something down. Chapter 1085. In that case, he didn't have to keep thinking about other possibilities. Lin Feng lifted his hand to press down his fringe. He seemed to be smiling, but there was a hint of sadness in it. Yunhu probably realized that Lin Feng had been too quiet since they got in the car. He thought it was the side effect of his kiss and didn't know how to break the atmosphere in the car. Fortunately, there was a topic to talk about. I didn't expect little Spade to be a girl. When Yunhu said this, he tilted his head. Lin Feng knew that according to Linhu's personality, it was already very difficult for him to find a topic to talk about from someone else. In fact, it wasn't that troublesome, since she had a boyfriend and was going overseas. No matter how much he thought about it, he really shouldn't have messed up his thoughts just because of a kiss. It was probably like what Yunhu had said. This was the last time. Even though Lin Feng had never been in a relationship before, he knew that the best way to start a new relationship was to bid farewell to his previous one. Although he didn't want to admit it, that kiss was probably Yunhu's farewell. After that, they were really just brothers. Lin Feng adjusted his emotions. When he looked up again, he was much more natural. I didn't expect little Spade to be the one who appeared at the masquerade. I feel like my intelligence is being challenged. I want to tell Zhao Sanpang and the others about this and let them experience what it means to have their intelligence crushed. From today onwards, I am going to doubt my life. Once they returned to their previous state, the atmosphere in the car changed for the better. Yunhu chuckled lightly. Silly and sweet person, I never expected you to overthink things. Hey, what are you talking about? Do you want to fight? Lin Feng reached out and locked Yunhu's neck from behind. He didn't use much force. The corners of their mouths curled up. Lin Feng felt much more relaxed now. After thinking it through, everything wasn't so complicated. When they got out of the car, there was a clank under his feet. Yunhu was in front of him. He looked at him and was about to retract his hand. Lin Feng used the force to steady himself. He put his hand on Yunhu's shoulder. Let's go. Lin Feng used to do this often. He liked to put his arm around his friend's shoulders. Because of this, Yunhu had always wanted him to change this habit. Because he didn't want to see this person being so close to others when they weren't together. Indeed, Lin Feng had changed. Old Jiang City's young master's style was vividly displayed on him. He had the spirit of not being able to get along with others. Believing his words, he could only put his arm around his best brother's shoulder. But ever since that day in the room when he saw Yunhu doing that to his photo, Lin Feng hadn't put his hand on Yunhu's shoulder like today. Over the past few days, Yunhu had been hoping that this person would return to how he used to be. He hoped that when he saw him, he wouldn't avert his gaze, and when he got close to him, his body would freeze for a moment. That was the last thing he wanted to see. That was why he found someone to act with him. He was afraid of his guard. But at that moment, Yunhu realized something. What he was most afraid of wasn't being on guard. He was afraid that things would really go according to what he thought and that they would return to the way they were before and only treat him as a brother. Apart from being brothers, they no longer had any possibility. The scenery of the military compound didn't change. In the center of the room there was also a model of a small fighter. There were specialized people standing guard. If they walked down this road, they would reach the Lin family's house. Yunhu knew that if he didn't say it today, he might never have the chance to say it again. Actually, your phone seems to be vibrating. Lin Feng interrupted him and glanced at his house. Alright, I'll go up first. As a person in love, don't be like Captain and Little Spade torturing a single dog like me. Do your research overseas and come back when you have time. Perhaps when you come back, I'll be different from before. I might even have a girlfriend, but there's one thing that won't change. I'll probably always be as handsome as I am now. Yunhu watched as he smiled faintly. The words, actually, as long as you ask me to stay, I won't go overseas, seemed to be stuck in his throat. He probably wouldn't care if he was really in love. He would also understand that there would always be a banquet that wouldn't end. He could even say the words girlfriend so easily. Yunhu's fingers moved slightly. When he looked at Lin Feng again, he only said one word. All right. Good night. Lin Feng stuffed a hand into his trouser pocket and turned to walk in. Yunhu had never expected that to be the last time he would see Lin Feng in the courtyard. Because the next day the Lin family's house had been emptied. At that time his mother had laughed and asked him, "You didn't do a good job as a brother. You said that the two of you grew up together and had such a good relationship. You didn't even know the Lin family's recent movements. The Lin family probably won't be in politics anymore. Lin Feng has really done well this time. The new place he moved to is very close to the Lin family. I heard from your Auntie Lin that Lin Feng plans to start from the bottom. I'm afraid the next time you want to see him will be the day you leave." Yunhu didn't know how to describe his feelings at that time. When he pushed open the window, the opposite side had become completely empty. Even the calculator that was placed there was gone. It turned out that it was so easy for a person to disappear. Ever since he was young, he had been used to it. The moment he pushed open the window, he could see that person tugging on his slippers, ruffling his black hair and looking at him in a daze. At first, he had thought that he would have to adapt to these habits when he went overseas. But he had never expected things to turn out like this. He had always been thinking about going overseas. He really wasn't sure what had happened to the Lin family. Yunhu's first reaction was to make a call. At that moment, he really realized that things wouldn't be the way he had imagined with Lin Feng. As long as he turned back, that person would always be there. To put it bluntly, he was bullying that person for being soft-hearted. He felt that no matter how far he went, that person would always be there. The call went through. A voice came from the other side, accompanied by some noise. "Hello who? *CK, this place is really hot. I'm out at the market, what's wrong? Are you busy?" Yunhu asked. "Where are you? I'll go and pick you up." The person on the other end paused for a moment. Then he laughed. "Hello, I'm really busy. I can't talk anymore. Lin Feng, come over here." Someone's voice came from the other side of the phone. "Okay, I'm coming." Lin Feng didn't even have time to say goodbye before hanging up. Yunhu listened to the low voice that didn't belong to Lin Feng. That extremely magnetic voice made his fingers paused. When he looked at the phone that was hung up, Yunhu's expression was one of confusion that he had never seen before. He felt that he finally understood what it felt like to be replaced. Even if Lin Feng had concealed his identity to work for the Lin family. But that voice was very familiar. It was the most valuable headhunter that the Lin family had hired. That person probably didn't know Lin Feng's identity. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken in such a tone. But that tone made Yunhu feel as though he was sitting on pins and needles. Everyone in this circle probably knew that that person was interested in boys. Perhaps Lin Feng himself would never understand how attractive he was to others. Yunhu didn't want to complicate things. He also knew that Lin Feng had just gone over. There wouldn't be anything between the two of them. Besides, the other party wouldn't be someone who would lay his hands on his subordinates. But not now. What about in the future? It wasn't just this person. After he went overseas, everyone seemed to have a chance to get close to that person. So what if he stopped it this time? That was what he thought, but Yunhu didn't give up. He continued to call. But this time the other party didn't pick up the call and hung up. After about half an hour, he replied with a WeChat message, "I'm still busy." There wasn't even a punctuation mark. Yunhu understood Lin Feng the most. Ever since he was young, he had never done anything against his will. If it was hot, he would probably try his best to find a place that wasn't hot. But this time it wasn't the case. Yunhu didn't call again. Because he knew that any more would be a disturbance. Even though he had never thought that the word disturbance would be used on him and Lin Feng. That day, Yunhu stood outside the Lin family's door. He stood there from 8 in the morning until 9 in the morning. After that, he had thought about it countless times. If he had said that sentence, would things have been different? But until the end of the story, no one would know what the ending would be. The shadow of the tree shook and scattered, the complicated light hitting everyone's face. This was the only time Bo Jio would wake up. When she woke up, she realized that she was still wearing the black dress and the Almighty's jacket was on her. She pressed down on her head and remembered that she had probably fallen asleep in the car without any secrets. Hadn't the Almighty woken her up? Bo Jio crossed her fair legs, one hand supporting her chin. She frowned slightly as she thought about a serious question. How had the Almighty explained to Madame Zhang and the others? Why was she wearing female clothing when he was carrying her? "What are you up to, sitting there alone?" A magnetic voice came from the side of the door. It was Chinemo. He was holding a tray with porridge, side dishes and fried golden steamed buns on it. Bo Jio straightened her back, a beautiful smile on her face. I just wanted to ask if Brother Mo saw Madame Zhang when he brought me in yesterday. No, Qin Mo replied faintly. Bo Jio instantly relaxed. That's good, Madame Zhang wouldn't have to explain if she saw us. Indeed. Qin Mo sat by the side of the bed, pinching a lock of her black hair leisurely, his lips curved into a faint smile. But I met my mom. Chapter 1086. If she had to find a sentence to describe her feelings, it would be that she had met Madame Zhang. Why was she so unlucky? Of all people she had to meet movie queen and it was rare for Bo Jio to remain expressionless for a long time. Her heart was in turmoil. That was probably what Qin Mo wanted to see. He leaned over, pinching her face. What's wrong? Are you frightened? Bo Jio was still confused, trying to organize her thoughts. At the very least, she had to be more sincere in front of movie queen and she thought for a long time about how she should ask. When she raised her head again, she saw that handsome face right in front of her, noble and elegant, with a hint of a smile on it. The Almighty's expression was obviously gloating. Even though it wasn't obvious, she wasn't blind. Bo Jio arched a brow, starting the conversation from the Almighty's point of view. Brother Mo, didn't movie queen and ask you anything when you carried a girl home last night? Was there a need to ask after seeing you? Qin Mo pinched her face again. Bo Jio. That wasn't a good reply. The Almighty hadn't said anything, returning the question back to her. What did movie queen say? Fine, she chose to be more direct. She couldn't avoid the Almighty. Qin Mo watched her casually, his body inching closer. You really want to know? Of course. Qin Mo inched closer, his voice calm. Then show some sincerity. Sincerity? Bo Jio paused. Qin Mo reached out and caressed her lips, his fingers caressing her lips. This was the scene Madame Zhang saw when she pushed the door open. The sunlight shone in, casting a faint layer of gold over the two equally beautiful people. Young master lifted her chin, about to kiss her but waiting for her to make the first move. The sound of cicadas faded. When Bo Jio saw Madame Zhang, she straightened her back and smiled. She didn't feel awkward since her image as a gangster was already set. Hence she called out lazily, Madame Zhang. Since movie queen and had already seen it, she wasn't afraid of being seen by Madame Zhang. When Madame Zhang heard the girl's voice, she turned to look at her face. The next moment, her eyes wavered. Isn't this young Master Jio? She had originally thought that her young master had done something to let young Master Jio down. But from the looks of it, that wasn't the case at all. More importantly, why was young Master Jio like this? Auntie Zhang felt like her brain cells were running out. If it wasn't for the face in front of her, she wouldn't have imagined the girl in front of her to be her favorite young man. Madame Zhang turned towards Qin Mo. Young master, this? Qin Mo, who was sitting by the side of the bed, spoke, his expression unchanged. Supreme Alliance had an event yesterday and one of the events was for this guy to dress up as a girl for fun. I see. The realization hit Madame Zhang but she still couldn't control her gaze. She sized Bo Jio up and muttered to herself, You look so much like a girl. If young master didn't say anything, she would really suspect something. Auntie Zhang only had one thought. She took out her phone and said, Madam will definitely be shocked to see young Master Jio like this. Crack. Chapter 1087. Qin Mo replied slowly, So what if I let you do it? Bo Jio stilled. Did the Almighty know something? Was he testing her? She hadn't even made a move yet. How did the Almighty know her motive for going to America? Qin Mo arched a brow. What? You didn't forget to kidnap me even in your dreams. Why aren't you speaking now? Did I say I wanted to kidnap you in my dreams? Bo Jio retorted. Qin Mo stretched out his hand and patted her face gently. There was a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. More than once. Last night when I hugged you, you said it 3 times. I didn't expect you to have such a hobby. She had really let it slip in her sleep. It seemed like her plan hadn't been exposed. The current situation was far better than she had imagined. She hadn't met movie queen and yesterday, the Almighty had been setting her up. She didn't have to think about how to explain herself. But Madame Zhang was still listening. Hey, couldn't he save her some face? With that, Bo Jio turned towards the direction where Madame Zhang had been standing. Only then did she realize that there was no one around. After taking the photos, Auntie Zhang saw that the two of them had something to talk about, so she took the photos and left excitedly. She didn't want to disturb the young master here. which meant that they were the only ones left in the room. Since it was just the two of them, what else could she care about? Since the Almighty had requested for her to kidnap him, she could give it a try before heading over. The moment she thought about it, the real gangster appeared. "You're really willing to let me kidnap you?" Chinamo watched her. Her excited expression didn't seem proper at all. "You can give it a try." The intelligent Bojio quickly realized this was an opportunity. With a nimble flip, she pressed down on Chinmo's right shoulder and pushed him onto the bed. She didn't remove her wig, her silky long hair falling with her movements, sweeping across Chinmo's face. Chinmo glanced up, his bandaged hand hanging by the side of the bed. He watched as she pressed him down, his gaze moving downwards. Today Bojio was wearing a knitted black dress. When she did this, not only were her fair collarbones exposed, even her curves and long snow-white legs were visible. Especially when he bent his long legs, he couldn't help but want to hold them in his hands. Chinamo retracted his gaze, his eyes deepening by an inch. Something seemed to have reached a critical point. At this moment, Bojio was still deep in thought about how to tie him up. By the time she reacted, the hand that was originally hanging by the side of the bed had already wrapped around her waist. His fingers slowly moved up, to her back and the back of her neck. Finally, his fingertips delved into her restlessly hot hair. Bojio stopped abruptly. At that time she could clearly feel the change in his breathing. Chapter 1088. Chinamo brought his little friend to the airport. The old men were excited, following them to the airport with their dragon head crutches. They even asked Bojio what she intended to do overseas. Bojio took a moment. She couldn't possibly say that her main purpose was to kidnap the Almighty. Hence she had to be more tactful. She pushed her sunglasses up and smiled faintly. "I'm going to be an international superstar." "Acting?" The old men did not agree and their expressions were all very serious. After retiring and staying in the compound, they had clearly become a group of old urchins. "Why didn't you fix computers and walk cats? Why did you become an actor?" Bojio. His words made sense, she couldn't refute him. Another old man tapped his dragon head crutches, his aura strong. "Old way, this little friend isn't fixing computers, he's playing games." "I know he's good at computers, right? Isn't it better to stay in the courtyard? There would be someone to help us move those water droplets. The one I'm raising will recognize this little friend." Chinamo held onto his boarding pass, standing tall and slender, his lips lifted into a smile. "Grandfather Wei, you must be joking. Do you lack someone to help you move your water droplets? Wasn't there someone standing in front of your door to take care of your plants?" Old General Wei didn't wish to speak. He just liked the little friend next door who was giving him a cigarette while walking his cat. What was wrong with that? Chinamo understood the old man's intentions, his smile didn't fade. He reached out and held onto her wrist, his voice calm. "Don't worry, I'll bring this fellow back and continue to send you cigarettes secretly. But you have to take care of your health, it's better to smoke less." Cough. After all, he was an elder and old General Wei still had to maintain his dignity. "Go, remember your identity when you go abroad." Yes. This was probably the reason why Chinamo was so likable. Even though he was cold and aloof, he hid his sharpness in front of his elders. He was humble and didn't seem cold at all. Instead he was calm. Bojio stood at the side thinking, "Brother Imo, I'm bringing you back this time, not you. You're going to be in a daze." It was as if he could imagine the shock in the Almighty's eyes. Thinking of this, his thin lips curled into a smile. Blocked by the black mask, the youngster's handsome face was tilted sideways, and his tall nose could be seen, which was still very handsome and eye-catching. The two of them were equally eye-catching. They walked through the security checkpoint together and boarded the plane together. They were the focus of attention the whole time. When they entered the first-class cabin, the beautiful stewardess came over with a blanket. Only then did everything return to peace. Bojio was starting to feel drowsy. Chinamo shifted his shoulders, allowing her to lean on him. He held her hand with one hand and sent a message with the other. He was noble and inviolable. When the air stewardesses walked past them, they couldn't help but discuss. It was the last test takeoff. Chinamo turned off his phone. The plane took off, and after less than 14 hours, it landed in New York City on the Atlantic coast. As the world's largest economic center, this city directly affected the global financial, media, politics, entertainment, and fashion world. As long as you drive on the avenue, you can see the world-famous Statue of Liberty. This city was filled with modern European-style buildings. The roads were wide and straight, and limited edition convertible sports cars could be seen everywhere. There were also many famous schools in the city. When Bojio and the others arrived, it was night time. A chauffeur came to fetch them wearing white gloves. When he saw Chinemo, he greeted, "Young master." When she saw the Maserati parked by the roadside, Bojio was almost certain that the Almighty was here to receive him was the family's overseas influence. That was the case. The Almighty was indeed a favored son of heaven. There was no need to talk about the Qin family, they were a classic example of an upright young man. The family only had one maternal grandson. It was no wonder the Almighty hadn't been moved when she had used money to buy him when they had been young. It was a pain to be too rich when one wanted to woo a girl. Bojio opened the door and sat down. Chinemo sat beside her. The moment they entered the car, she received a call. It was Movie Queen and had arrived 2 days ago and was removing her makeup on the set. She looked elegant, but she couldn't hide her happiness. "You can't take Jill away, do you hear me?" "I won't, I'll send her over now." Chinmo's voice was calm. He listened for a few more words before hanging up. The chauffeur spoke up. From the way he drove, one could tell that he had undergone proper etiquette training. "Young Master Jill, have you ever been in New York before?" "No," Bojio replied calmly. But when she saw the familiar streets, a mischievous glint appeared in her eyes. Especially when she saw the 2 police cars pass by each other, the corners of her mouth curled up. She seemed to be smiling, but it didn't seem like a smile, bringing out Z's unique evil aura. That devilish aura was concealed by the neon lights that filled the sky. The chauffeur didn't notice anything amiss. Instead, he glanced at the youngster and smiled. "Young Master Gio, in front of you is the famous Times Square. Do you see the largest billboard? The people that appear on it are definitely international celebrities. Every year, when we welcome the new year, more than 500,000 people would gather here to count down. It's a grand occasion." When Bojio heard this, she reached out to caress the bridge of her nose. She couldn't tell him that she had fought with the Almighty here. That had been the first time they had fought. In front of the opera house, people had acted like they were in the movies. It was here that she had met her most feared opponent. But at that time, she hadn't known that the person who had almost destroyed her billboard was her pet. It was obvious that Chinmo's memories were here. His gaze deepened. He turned back, his voice slow. "I thought that anyone who sees this place for the first time would be more or less shocked." "I'm shocked too." Bojio stretched lazily. "But I'm still jet-lagged and can't perform well." With that, she leaned into Chinmo's arms, lying on his long legs. She smiled faintly. "Sleep for a while more." Chinmo allowed the youngster to lie down, not saying a word. On the other hand, the chauffeur's eyes widened. Fortunately, before his young master had arrived, he had heard many things. Otherwise, when he saw this scene, he would really wonder if he had seen a fake young master. The drive from the airport to the filming location took about 1.5 hours. Bojio carried a black backpack and jumped out of the car. She was still wearing a large black mask. The cold moonlight shone into her eyes, bringing out the best in this place. "Once you're done, send me a message and I'll come fetch you." Chinmo wound down the car window, his side profile handsome and elegant. Bojio replied, "Okay." Then he strolled into the crowded Star Creation Plaza. At this moment, another figure walked out from the side of the sports car. She stood beside the car and called out, "Young master." Chinmo glanced up and said, "Follow her and only show yourself when necessary." "Yes." The silhouette didn't make a single sound as he walked. It was obvious that he had received specialized training. Chinmo reached out and the car window rolled up. If he wanted to know what she was up to, he had to give her some freedom. Otherwise, it would only backfire. After all, a certain someone would never stay there quietly. Especially when you let your guard down, she would always take the opportunity to scratch you. He knew that feeling well. It wasn't painful, but it would always be there. Chinmo knew that she had already started planning her escape route. If there were many guesses in the past, after coming here, a certain someone's behavior had proven one point. She wanted to do something. Chinmo played with the silver cigarette lighter in his hand. He turned his head and lit a cigarette. His voice was still calm. "Let's go to the old place first. I need more information about Z." "Yes, young master." The sleek black sports car drove into the bridge. It was at the biggest Star Creation base. Bojio was thinking as she walked. She might have to make some last-minute adjustments to her plan. It was simple. She thought of the Qin and family's power but neglected the Almighty's own power. Back then he had almost caught her in the act. This meant that he had people here. Bo Jiu lifted her head and looked up. She didn't know what she saw, but her eyes lit up. She thought she knew how she had managed to distract the attention of some people. She just needed a little modern technology and a little magic. Just as Bo Jiu lifted her lids, a person walked over with a gloomy expression. A man with a gloomy face walked over with a dissatisfied expression. He didn't even notice if there was anyone in front of him. Or perhaps, even if he noticed it, he would push her away the moment he saw a yellow-skinned person. "Go away, you little hindrance." He said these words in English. He was a local after all. No, he should be called a local celebrity. He was a classic international celebrity. The muscles on his arms were firm and he was well developed. He was strong and could fight. He was handsome with thin lips and a high-nose bridge. He was a classic pretty boy here. He was also the third male lead in this movie. Since she wasn't prepared, the moment she was pushed, Bo Jiu relied on her instinctive reflexes. She leaned to the side beautifully, her eyes cold. She didn't suffer any physical injuries. Bo Jiu wanted to pick up her shoulder bag and continue walking. Unexpectedly, a voice came from the other side. It was a rare excitement. "Jiu? Jiu." Bo Jiu turned, stuffing a hand into her pocket. She arched a brow. "Director. Jiu, you're finally here. That's great." The Americans would hug people when they were happy, even if it was an international director. But her back was patted by a bare paw. Bo Jiu felt slightly pressured. "I'm happy to see you again. Where's movie queen in?" "She's filming the next scene and she's still trying to get the feeling. She did tell me that you would be coming, but I'm still surprised." When the director spoke in Mandarin, there was always a sense of awkwardness, but this was still considered good. It was also because of the director's hug and welcome. The busy staff around them stopped what they were doing. Their gaze landed on Bo Jiu. Under the warm night lights, a slender figure stood there. A slender figure stood there with a lazy smile on his face. He had one hand in his pocket and a black bracelet on his exposed snow-white wrist. He had a head of silver hair and a pair of shiny black earrings. He was young, handsome, and full of evilness. "Oh, this boy is really pretty. That pair of black eyes fits my fantasy of an Asian. But there aren't many Asians who would dye their hair this color. Shouldn't they all have black hair? This does fit the image of the mysterious hacker in the script." "I don't think so. He looks so skinny. Can he fight?" "I'm not sure. I heard that the director went to all the countries in Asia to find such a person. Why not go to Japan? At least they would be more obedient and cooperative." Listening to the discussions around him, the third male lead also spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone could hear him. "Huaxia's male actors are all weak chickens. Everyone knows this. I reckon that once there's a fight scene, this person will be shouting for a stunt double. You guys have to be merciful. Don't scare our Oriental dolls. What if they break them?" With that, a burst of laughter came from the other side. That smile could be said to be a joke, but for some reason, it made people feel uncomfortable. Bo Jiu held her shoulder bag with one hand, glancing over. The international director was still immersed in the excitement of Bo Jiu's arrival. Besides, he had to remind the filming team not to make any mistakes. Hence, he didn't notice anything. On the other hand, the third male lead caught her gaze. He lifted the edges of his lips in a provocative manner as he mouthed, "Chinese pig." He spoke in English. With that, he turned and continued laughing with the people beside him. Bo Jiu's gaze deepened, turning into ice. It seemed to have become a strange phenomenon in this industry. Every actor in China wanted to develop here because they could prove that they were a superstar. Because of this, some people would use Chinese actors to open up the Chinese film market. It was a simple logic. Some Chinese actors would advertise in China, saying that they would be acting in a certain blockbuster. But when the audience entered the cinema, they realized that they weren't actors at all, they were just passers-by. The more this was the case, the more people looked down on Chinese actors. Gradually, in this place where stars were created, there was a saying, "Chinese actors are willing to play any role, whether it's to paint them beyond recognition or to have them accompany them throughout the entire process. As long as you arrange a role for them, they will definitely let you earn all the Chinese people's money." After all, movies nowadays do need Eastern elements for the audience to buy in. Chapter 1089. This was also the reason why the third male lead could be so unscrupulous. Bo Jiu held onto her shoulder bag with one hand and stuffed her other hand into her pocket. She looked at him silently. Perhaps it was because he had been stared at for too long, or perhaps it was because the young man's eyes were so dark that there seemed to be no end to them. They were as deep as an ancient well, as if he was being stared at by something. For some reason, the third male lead felt that the young man's eyes were a little creepy. It was this feeling that gradually turned into anger. How dare a B***** look at him with such a gaze? Did he know the rules? Did he know that every Chinese actor who came here had to respect them? Since he didn't know, he would teach him a lesson. The third male lead smiled at Bojio, the disdain and mockery in his smile obvious. The people around them were still laughing. After less than half a minute, the international director walked over, his face filled with excitement. Come, take a look at the script. I'll get someone to explain the scene to you. Bojio retracted her gaze, her chin nodding. Who is he? You want to get to know Alan? The director laughed. That's great, the two of you have scenes together. His scenes haven't started yet, why don't you get him to explain it to you? Bojio seemed to be thinking about something. She smiled mischievously. Sure. Alan, hey Alan. The director called out to the third male lead. The person called Alan walked over. He was indeed polite to the director. Even if he was hostile towards someone, he would hide it. The director patted his shoulder. Explain the scene to Gio, this is his first time acting. First time acting? Director, I'm really worried that even if I explain the scene to him, he wouldn't know how to act, Alan said jokingly. But it was obvious that he looked down on Bojio. The other two actors also turned to look at them. One of them didn't approve of Alan's actions. Since the director had chosen the actor, he must have his reasons. Besides, they would only know how the other party would act. Alan obviously didn't think so. The moment he saw that the other party was from China, it was a headache. Even so, there was no need for the people around to stand up for an outsider. After all, their impression of some Chinese actors was that they didn't have many productions, but they liked to show up on the red carpet. It was undeniable that there were still some outstanding actors. But to a certain extent, the person in front of him didn't have any acting skills. Here, acting skills were the deciding factor. The international director frowned and said, "That's because you don't know Gio. He just needs to be himself in this movie." Since that's the case, then I'm indeed worried. Alan would not embarrass the director on such an occasion. He reached out and took out the script. Let me tell him about the scene between us first. The director smiled and patted his shoulder again. Someone called again. The director had no choice but to tell Bojio, I'll go get busy. Listen to the content and we'll start the rehearsal. All right. Bojio didn't seem to be affected at all. Her lips were curved into a faint smile. In that instant, Qin Mo's shadow could be seen on her. Have you been alone for too long? Even his temperament would be a little similar to that person. After the director left, Alan's expression changed. His face was full of mockery. Oh no, I forgot that you Chinese actors are extremely bad at English. Don't tell me that you can't understand what I'm saying after talking for so long? That would be really awkward. The people around them saw that Bojio didn't have much of a reaction. They thought she really didn't understand. Alan laughed again and placed the script at the side. I really don't understand where the director found such a dumb pig like you. You're wasting our time. Alan. Another actor couldn't stand it anymore and reminded him. Alan saw that the other actor was just a little smaller than him and didn't bother about him. Mind your own business. Right at this moment the youngster spoke. She was still in the same lazy posture with one hand in her pocket. Her voice was pleasant and slow. You're the dumb pig. 5 words, calm and indifferent. Those present understood Chinese, so of course they understood the meaning of this sentence. Alan frowned. What? I said you the authentic British accent was filled with an indescribable magnetism. The young man's unique voice was like gurgling water, penetrating Alan's eardrums bit by bit. I say you're the stupid pig. She spoke in both English and Chinese. Alan's face was filled with anger. He really looked like a piece of pig liver. After all, he hadn't expected this youngster to not only understand his words, but to even repeat them in 2 languages. This was a slap to his face. Alan was furious. It was as though he was going to beat someone up. His right hand had already grabbed the youngster's collar. The veins on his arm were popping. His aura was terrifying. His manager held him back. Calm down, Alan, calm down. This is the person the director brought. Alan gritted his teeth and swung his arm. His eyes were like a venomous snake as he spat out his serpent's tongue. Just you wait, little brat. Bojio smiled faintly. She reached out to tidy her collar. Sure, I'll wait. The more she acted like this, the angrier Alan became. The rage burned him to the point where he almost lost his rationality. There was also a Chinese person working behind the scenes. He reached out and pulled Bojio back. Then he turned to the manager. I'll pull him down for a chat. The manager heaved a sigh of relief and waved his hand. Bojio allowed a person who was almost 30 years old to pull her. That person said, I know you're angry after hearing what he said. But you have to be careful when you're here. Don't look at him. I heard that he has dealings with people on the American highway. If you provoke him in the filming set, he will still be worried about the director. He won't do anything to you, but it's hard to say in the future. Besides, with your current state, even 3 people wouldn't give him a beating. So we're going to allow him to scold Chinese pigs? Bojio interrupted. The man turned back. There were already some wrinkles at the corner of his eyes. He sighed before saying, none of us are heroes. It's good to be patriotic, but it's not good to be too reckless outside. I want to retaliate like you. Let's talk about something else. When I first came here, I was tricked. But what could I do? My family's only money was used to send me overseas. Washing dishes here makes more money than in China. It wasn't easy for me to get a job, and I can send money back home every month. If I retaliate, it would mean losing my job. A rich young master like you probably doesn't know how hard it is for a Chinese to find a job in America. Some kind-hearted people will tip you when they see you dressed poorly and treat you well. But most of the time it's a problem with the system. It's all about survival, do you understand? Bojio paused after hearing his words. Why don't you go back? The man didn't reply. He just shook his head. There wasn't a single person who didn't miss home. But more importantly, they had to support their families. Bojio knew that it was already good enough that he had pulled her away. After all, there were 2 people who didn't even care about her. They were probably worried about getting into trouble. That was normal. But she was the young master of a rich family. She didn't lack money and didn't need to support a family. She just needed to support an almighty. Bojio glanced up. Her gaze landed on Alan, who had kicked the thing away. Her gaze was icy cold. It was time for some people to swallow their words. The international director was really busy. Otherwise, he would have noticed the abnormality. The other actors who knew about this were worried about the youngster, but they didn't want to get involved. Alan was still watching Bojio from afar. His gaze was bloodthirsty. Someone walked over wanting to help Bojio. I didn't expect your English to be so good. It was the local actor who had spoken up for Bojio. But I have the same reminder. Really, don't provoke Alan. Thank you. Bojio had grown up here. She knew there were good and bad people in every country. There was no doubt that bad people had to be beaten up. Other than Bojio, there was another Chinese actor. The actor probably walked through a lot of doors to get the role in his hand. He was standing beside Alan and saying, don't make life difficult for people who don't have any qualities. You should know some people who don't know how high the heavens are. Alan didn't like any Wuxia people now, so he didn't appreciate the actor's words. He glared at the actor and sat back in his resting position. The male actor had no choice but to walk over to Bojio. You should apologize to Alan. Don't you know you're representing China? Bojio unwrapped a lollipop and placed it in her mouth. When she heard his words, she glanced up and asked calmly, you still know about face? How refreshing. What kind of manners are you? The actor clenched his fists. Bojio was devilish. Why are you talking about manners with people who aren't human? Move aside, I don't have time to beat you up. The actor laughed. Do you know how popular I am in China? You, oh? Bojio arched a brow. I'm not sure. It seems like your definition of fire is bragging. The male actor's face darkened with anger. You probably can't imagine how much my fans love me. As you can imagine, there will be fans like idols. Bojio's voice was still lazy. If not, why would there be someone like you? You sure know how to suck up, but you're the one who doesn't talk about China and its reputation the most. The actor still wanted to say something. The director had already walked over from afar. The male actor could only swallow his words. He pretended that nothing had happened and walked to the side. Joe, how's your understanding of the script? From his words, it wasn't hard to tell that this international director couldn't wait for Bojio's audition. Bojio lifted the script in her hands. I just started. The international director was a little disappointed, but he knew that he had been too impatient. His assistant reminded him in a low voice, Sir, should we let this actor try on her makeup and costume? Right. Could a character act well and have a sense of presence? Other than skilled acting skills and her own looks, there was another important factor. It was what people in the industry called fixing the makeup. Everyone knew how many characters were ruined by the hands of the stylist. This was a principle that had been taught in movies and television. But there was one thing that a person couldn't handle. Some styles were also important. Even though the director had a lot of say in the production team. But from the looks of Bo Jio's character, she was the male god in many people's hearts even though she wasn't the male lead. But this character had an unimaginable amount of support online. A mysterious hacker who came and went without a trace, good and evil at the same time. People could only imagine how this character would look like based on descriptions. Indeed, from the height and age, this youngster in front of them fit the description. It was said that the screenwriter of this novel was based on the hacker Z who had been popular in the entire Fifth Avenue back then. They had only heard of that person but had never seen him before. But according to the description of the police, he was indeed around this height and looked very young. But no one knew the details. The screenwriter added in his own imagination and described him as a beautiful youngster with Eastern blood. The original sentence in the novel was described as follows. The night breeze blew past. The youngster's messy short hair didn't make him dispirited. Instead, it added to his noble aura. He was like an Eastern vampire aristocrat. The pure black windbreaker with a hood covered his face, revealing only the curve of his chin. But that curve was enough to leave people with endless fantasies about his handsomeness. Hence, the youngster's appearance was passable. Even in this production team with a superstar, he was exceptionally good-looking. But the assistant felt that the youngster was a little too soft compared to the character he was going to be acting. Would he be able to bring out the aura of the character after he wore the costume? After the assistant's reminder, the director remembered. Alright, fixing the makeup. Gio, go and put on your makeup and clothes first. You just have to take a look at the script during this time. We'll be going through the scenes later so that you can get used to the rhythm here. It's fine if you can't remember your lines. Bo Jio smiled and asked, which scene? Which scene? The international director was still hesitant. At the start, he had wanted Gio and En to act together so that he could get used to the scene faster. But now that En had finally found the feeling from the previous scene, he had to act for a while more. He caressed his chin, his fingers moving. Chapter 1090. I think we should look at the makeup before filming, the actor from China said. He glanced at Bo Jio and pointed out. This role is too important. If the aura isn't strong enough, the audience won't be satisfied and it might affect the box office and reputation. As soon as the words box office and reputation were mentioned, everyone paused. After all, as a filmmaker, to put it bluntly, these two aspects were the most important. The director had spent so much time looking for someone. If the aura wasn't strong enough, it might ruin the original work. There would definitely be a backlash and that was the last thing they wanted. Hence, from a certain perspective, the actor was right. The makeup was the key. But he didn't jump out to speak because of the movie. It was because of what had happened previously. He wanted to vent his anger and at the same time, he could get on Alan's good side. Why not? The director could tell that there was another layer of trouble in his words. He frowned. He had thought that since they were all from China, it would be easier to get along. He hadn't expected this actor to be the troublemaker. Under such circumstances, the other actors watched. She was obviously trying to make the director take a step back. The international director had a temper too. He narrowed his eyes and was about to speak. But Bo Jio walked to the assistant's side first. She used the youngster's unique voice, pleasant and magnetic. Where do I go to get my makeup done? The assistant almost wanted to thank the person in front of him for being so sensible. Otherwise, if the director were to flip out, the situation would definitely be awkward. Fortunately, the youngster spoke up in time. Here, come over here. The assistant hurriedly reached out. Bo Jio followed behind her, the warmth in her eyes gone. The makeup artist was famous in the industry. Honestly, he hadn't expected much from her at the start. But at this moment, when he looked at the youngster again, the dark eyes didn't seem to have any impurities. They were cold and mysterious. He raised a brow and asked the assistant, "What's wrong? Getting into character early?" The assistant could only guess. The aura exuding from the youngster seemed to be changing bit by bit. It was an indescribable feeling, as though there was something mysterious about it. The makeup artist put on the makeup first. When she touched the youth's face, she realized that she didn't need any foundation. After all, the youth's skin was too good. It was as white as jade and there was a kind of silky coolness when she touched it. It was easy to think of Oriental porcelain. Bo Jio seemed to have noticed the pause in her makeup artist's words. Bo Jio lifted the corners of her eyes, the tiny tear mole appearing. What is it? Ahem, nothing. The makeup artist was stunned. He would never admit that at that moment he was a little dazed. It wasn't rare to see good-looking people in this industry, but it was rare to see someone like the youngster who had a blood-sucking aura. The youth was fair enough. His eyes were very dark. Her eyelashes and the bridge of her nose were impeccably perfect. Especially the youth's lips, which were very pale. The makeup artist suddenly had the thought of doing her makeup seriously. In fact, there was no need to draw much. The eyeliner and the increased brightness of the tiara were all to make the youngster's facial features stand out. One had to admit that some makeup could indeed make people as cold as ice in an instant. When the makeup artist saw the finished product, she couldn't help but widen her eyes. He could not imagine what kind of changes the young man would undergo after he put on the costume. The assistant was still waiting anxiously outside. He didn't know who had mentioned that someone was going to appear in this role online. It was obvious that the response wasn't very good. After all, everyone had a different Hamlet in their heart. Actually, the assistant knew that there would be people who wouldn't be satisfied with this role. But if they had found a famous actor, the opposition might have been smaller. Just like now, the assistant glanced at the comments and rubbed his aching head. What's wrong with getting a Chinese actor? I don't think it's a problem to get a Chinese actor since the person we like is indeed from the East. Isn't this already written in the novel? More importantly, I heard that this actor doesn't have any acting skills and his aura is weak. Weak aura? Oh my God. Isn't this ruining my idol? To be honest, I really hope so. There's no other way. I was going to watch it, but now I've completely lost interest. The comments online would definitely not be good. That was normal. After all, everyone had expectations for the idol in their hearts. As the assistant, it was probably time to remind the director. Hence, she ran over and showed her phone to the director. Someone leaked the news? The director was very smart. He could tell that there was something fishy about it. After all, not many people knew that he had poached Gio to act in the movie. The assistant lowered his voice. It's not a matter of who leaked the news, but whether the actor you found can pass the most basic test. Alan stood at the side and could see how ugly the director's expression was. He glanced at his phone again and smiled smugly. Then he glanced at the actor standing beside him. Aren't you afraid of dealing with someone who comes from the same place as you? I didn't do anything. I just wanted everyone to know what was going on. Obviously, the actor was a White Lotus. Alan appreciated his sense of attachment to a hero who knew how to adapt to the situation. That was how a Chinese pig should be. The atmosphere was tense. The assistant kept raising her wrist to look at the time. There were too many staff here. Only those who were filming were at other locations. Most of the rest were here, including some of the main actors. The assistant was really worried that the effect would be too bad. When the director, before the assistant could finish analyzing the situation, the moment she looked up, she was completely stunned. Her hand holding the phone also squatted on the spot, and her mouth opened to a certain extent. Every inch of expression on his face was filled with intense amazement. The crowd followed her line of sight. The first thing that came into view was a slender figure in a black trench coat. Gradually, the youth walked out of the darkness. His silver hair was mostly covered by the hood of the coat, and only his face could be vaguely seen. He was handsome, cold, and had a hint of evil. He was wearing a white shirt, which was pulled to one side by the youth. This outfit didn't suppress the youngster. Instead, the youngster controlled it. Most importantly, his eyes were extremely dark and mysterious. When the youngster played with the pure silver USB stick in his hands, he walked towards them. When he glanced up, black feathers flew into the air. Everything behind him seemed to have become a backdrop for the youngster. In the blink of an eye, his soul was destroyed. In that instant, there was only the sound of people gasping. One of the staff clutched his chest in agitation. The other exclaimed in disbelief. Even though some of the main actors didn't express anything, the shock in their eyes proved that the youngster's makeup was flawless. The assistant struggled to find her voice. Director. Ha ha ha. The director wasn't a straightforward person. But ever since Bo Gio came, he laughed more frequently. Now you know, only Gio is suitable for this role. Really? How can they be so similar? How can they be so similar? The assistant was a fan of the original novel. At this moment, she was circling around Bo Gio. It was as though she had seen her male idol. She wanted to touch him. Who could understand? Alan and the male actor had the ugliest expressions. Both of their expressions changed at this moment. The former clenched his fists unwillingly, a sinister glint in his eyes. The male actor was slapped in the face. After all, he had always been hailed as a stunningly handsome man in China. Right now, standing beside the youngster, he was almost out of the picture. The director was still laughing. The other actors expressed their friendliness towards Bojio. "Hey bro, I can guarantee you that many people will change their opinion of you with this makeup." Bojio smiled lightly. "Thank you. We are looking forward to your next performance." It was another local actor. He reached out to shake her hand. Perhaps many people thought that makeup was based on one's looks, but that wasn't the case. If it wasn't for Bojio's character, which gave people a mysterious and noble aura and a pair of playful eyes, they wouldn't have thought that just because they were good-looking, they wouldn't have been acknowledged. But the acknowledgement made Alan extremely unhappy. He couldn't take it anymore. He took a step forward and started to mock her openly. In China, there are too many people who are just good-looking but don't have acting skills. They are still chased by a group of fans. Brother, I have to tell you that doesn't work here. Actors still have to rely on their acting skills to speak. Bojio stopped playing with the USB. She looked at him and suddenly broke into a smile. That's rare, I agree with you on this point. Actors still have to rely on their acting skills to speak. It's about which country they are discriminating against. Alan narrowed his eyes. The tension made the director frown deepen. Alan, you need to calm down. It isn't suitable for you to act with Gio now. Cancel what we just said. With that, the surrounding people heaved a sigh of relief. After all, if they really used the fight scene, Alan might take revenge. Even if he didn't, the youngster wouldn't be able to take a single punch from him. However, to everyone's surprise, the young man, who had always been smiling faintly, suddenly said, "Don't. Alan wants me to see how he acts in an action scene. I also want Alan to see how we Chinese act in action scenes." At this moment, the director's expression froze. The assistant's expression was one of disgust. "Child, you are asking for trouble, do you know that?" The actors at the side probably wanted to persuade her as well. Alan turned, not allowing the situation to change. "In that case, let's start. Do you need me to write down your lines?" "It's fine. Other than physics, I'm good at reading and memorizing." Bojio's memory wasn't as good as Almighty Chin's, but it was still better than ordinary people. This was a skill that every hacker had to train. Since she had read the script twice, it wasn't hard to remember the 3 lines. The director was worried, his expression darkening. He reached out, wanting to pull Bojio back. But Bojio held onto his wrist. "It's a good chance to test my acting skills." "Assistant, how does this look like you're trying out your acting skills? You're clearly trying to get yourself killed. Don't all good-looking people use their brains? How can you not see that Alan is so hostile towards you? How can someone with such a pure personality survive in this industry? You will definitely die without a corpse." Bojio didn't have to guess to know what the people around her were thinking. But at this moment, her attention was on Alan. Our Lord Gio was thinking about how to beat him to his heart's content. Both of them wanted their team positions. No matter how unwilling the director was, the 2 actors were already in position. He had no choice but to sit beside the camera operator. Right now, he only hoped that Bojio would hide and not let herself get hurt. He couldn't let the actor he had painstakingly found get hurt before the filming even started. However, everyone knew that it was impossible for this matter to end just like that when they saw Alan wiping his hands. They were even worried that the youngster would be crippled by Alan. "Everyone get ready." As a director, this was probably the scene he didn't want to film the most. Action. When the 2 words fell, Alan wasn't suppressing himself anymore. Alan was no longer repressed. His emotions leaked out faster than his fist. With a ferocious expression, he waved his right arm at the young man. It was so fierce that the director didn't even have time to shout for a stop. The assistant at the side tilted her head. She really didn't want to see her almighty getting beaten up, even if it was an illusion. Hence she didn't see it. In the next second, the youngster turned sideways. With a wave of her left hand, she pinched the arm that was reaching towards her. Then she pulled it forcefully. With a sinister smile, the wind blew. Her long legs bent her knees and she hit Alan's stomach fiercely. What was even more shocking was that when the youngster did this action, her right hand was in her pocket the entire time. Which meant that she only used one hand. The black trench coat was rolled up, along with the hat that was hanging down. She was ruthless and extremely cool. But that wasn't the end. Alan wanted to dodge. However, he was pulled back by the youngster. Just like that, she held onto his wrist with one hand and used it as a fulcrum. With a somersault, she threw him out. There was a loud bang. Alan was thrown onto the ground. Just the sound alone was enough to tell how painful it was. Not to mention the twisted expression on his face. The rising dust caused everyone's eyes to widen. The youngster in the black trench coat was extremely nonchalant. She strolled over and looked down from above, revealing only a section of her chin. She said the first line in the script. I hate people punching my face the most. Chapter 1091. The camera zoomed in. Even the master who filmed the scene was shocked by the scene, let alone the other people on the scene. The director was the first to react. He lowered his left hand, his face filled with excitement. Pass. One word. It pulled everyone back to their senses. That's great. That's really great. The director's surprise was obvious. The people at the side sighed. This is the first time I've seen someone fight so handsomely. Oh my God, I'm going to become an Asian fan. He's Chinese, now I feel that Chinese men are sexy when they're manly. I really want to sleep with him. Oh baby, don't be like that, Chinese people are more reserved, you'll scare him away. Amidst the chaotic exclamations, the cameraman made a retracting motion. Alan's hand was still on his chest, moaning. The male actor and Alan's assistant ran over, working together to help him up. Alan didn't appreciate it, pushing the male actor away, his eyes still on the youngster, his hands clenched. When he saw everyone looking at him, his face turned red and white. He had lost to a Chinese pig in front of everyone. What was wrong with him? Alan was not convinced. He still wanted to get his face back, but anyone with a discerning eye could see how much pain he was in. After pushing the person who was supporting him away, Alan's breathing became unstable. From the start, Boju just stood there, only when the other party came closer did she speak. This is the Chinese way of filming a fight scene. You made yourself sound so good at the start, you probably don't need to rest. I think I'm still online, we can take the chance to shoot the second part. Shoot the second part? Alan's assistant was the first to shake his head. No, this method is too barbaric, I have to bring my artist for treatment first. His words were directed at the director. The director didn't want to force him, even though Alan's attitude was a problem. But just as he was about to speak, Alan spoke, his tone cold. Alan spoke in a cold tone, I demand compensation from the production crew. I can't continue acting with such a violent actor. Violent? The director's assistant stood at the side with his eyes wide open. Was there something wrong with this person? He was the one who had chosen to act and fight with them. Now that he had lost, he said that they were violent? The director was also angry. He narrowed his eyes. From today onwards, you don't have to come anymore. Alan did not expect such an outcome. This movie was a big production. He had given up so many offers just for this movie. What right did the director have to make such a decision? Being kicked out of the cast in public was not something that could happen to him. Thinking of this, Alan swung his arm and strode towards the nanny van parked by the roadside. After getting in the car, he said to his assistant, "Get the media here." At this time, the assistant felt that it was inappropriate. The media is waiting for the film to be released. After all, this film has high expectations and good reviews. Even if we find the media and post it here, there will be people in the theater who will tell us the truth. Isn't there an uncontrolled comment section? Post the news there. The people over there don't know what happened, but once they say it, everyone will believe it. Alan had obviously thought of an excuse. Hence, after receiving the call from the media, Alan started to make up a story. There was indeed something that happened, but when it came to his mouth, it was completely reversed. He did not mention that he had provoked them. He only said that someone had hit him and that the other party had gained a lot of fans because of it. As a result, the director misunderstood him and asked him to leave the cast. At this point, Alan even sighed. I really don't want to think about the situation back then. First of all, I don't have any objections to the cast in the movie, but with such an actor around, I really want to quit. After the media recorded it to make sure that it was a headline, they were worried that people would find out if they posted it in the comments section. So they simply followed Alan's instructions and posted it elsewhere. The people there did not know what had happened. Many netizens believed it. They even exclaimed in surprise, "How could such a thing happen? Who is that actor?" Alan was still replying, "That's exactly what happened. I experienced it myself. It doesn't seem possible." Some netizens felt that there was a loophole. According to what you said, you didn't do anything wrong. Why did the director ask you to leave? Alan avoided the main point. I don't hate anyone, you can choose not to believe it, but I was indeed forced out. Now, I can only do the interview here and can't do anything else. For this movie, I spent so much effort on publicity. Now that I think about it, it's really... Alan didn't have many fans. But his words were enough to make people speculate. the discussion became more and more heated. Until someone stirred up the news to the cast and dug out the actor who had hit him. They wanted Bojio to come out and give an explanation. He shouldn't have beaten someone and forced him out. This way, the people who had doubted Bojio's suitability for this role appeared again. I really feel that the movie will be ruined. What should I do? I didn't expect this Chinese actor to be so. I'm not looking forward to it anymore. I won't comment on the difference in ideals. But if an actor acts like this, can he still act? The negative news came crashing down. It even became more and more intense. This news spread to China. After being translated, it became Chinese. Spadez's fans, no, it wasn't just Spadez's fans. Everyone who liked esports didn't think that Spadez was such a person. Compared to the rational fans. There were some younger ones who were confused. Does that mean that our big Spade went to act in a movie? He really went to act in a movie? He even went overseas? At this moment, the haters came out, pretending to be passers-by. I'm not a fan, I'm not a hater. Although I have long wanted to expose Spadez's character, that's right, Spadez is like this, he likes to oppress others. But isn't Spadez's fans too bored? He didn't say who the actor was, he just looked at the description and thought that it was your Spadez. How interesting do you think anyone can act? According to your logic, your Spadez is the best in the world. He can't even be chosen as a professional actor. Yet, your Spadez was chosen by an international director. I won't say anything. In an instant the rumor started spreading. There was an uproar both at home and abroad. After all, Bojio was overseas now. She wasn't just representing herself, she was representing China. According to the news online, some of Bojio's actions were inappropriate. No one knew what exactly happened. The originally harmonious atmosphere of the cast and crew. Because of this incident, they had to stop filming. Bojio expressed her apologies. But she said, as a Chinese, I can't tolerate others insulting my country. But because I couldn't tolerate it, I caused the delay in filming. I'm really sorry. She was apologizing to the cast and crew, not to Alan and not to some comments. Everyone present knew what was going on. Especially the male actor who had a lot of charisma, the one who called Bojio brother. He reached out and patted Bojio's shoulder. He was extremely humorous. If I were you, I would have beaten him up. But honestly, your performance really shocked us. Your moves were too beautiful. Is this Chinese Kung Fu? Teach me when you're free. Also, teach me how to use chopsticks. I still don't understand how you use 2 wooden sticks to eat. Won't the vegetables fall? Won't your hands clamp them? Teach me and I'll treat you to red wine. How about that? No problem. A true gentleman was straightforward when he befriended them. The rest of them agreed. The youngster shouldn't be the one to take the blame. Regardless of whether it was according to the script or Alan's actions, there wasn't a problem with the youngster's performance. On the other hand, Alan's insults at the start, the exposure of the cast and crew's privacy, and the intention to take revenge. As an actor, none of these actions were appropriate. Let's not talk about how much of an impact his actions had on the crew. Being a human was the most important thing. With such an actor in the cast, there wouldn't be any huge productions. However, although everyone present knew about this, they really didn't know how to explain it to the crowd at this time. After all, they weren't the parties involved and didn't understand the twists and turns in this matter. It would only make people feel that the more they explained, the worse it would be. The director's assistant looked at Bojio with a different gaze. How should he put it? This was the entertainment industry. As a public figure, she had to endure such distortions. Even if it was unfair, there was nothing she could do. What's going on? At this moment, movie queen walked over from the east. She was wearing a pair of crystal shoes, a dark red blazer draped over her shoulders, her long legs exuding an aura. If movie queen had been elegant in the past, right now she was covered in flames. Where did the rumors come from? This was directed at the director. After all, only the two of them knew why Bojio had agreed to act in this scene. It was all because of movie queen and hadn't expected such a thing to happen the moment she brought her into the cast. She knew Gio well. Usually when she made a move, it would be against her principles. It's my fault. The director was someone who dared to admit his mistakes. Because of this, he was able to guarantee the box office. I'll get the crew to make a statement to explain the entire situation. Oh. The assistant felt that it wasn't appropriate. Right at this moment. From afar, a Chinese man walked over with large strides. No one knew where he came from. He was wearing a black t-shirt, his shoes were the highlight and there seemed to be something hanging on his waist. He walked straight towards Bojio. The rest of the people were stunned. Who was this person? A paparazzi? Where had he been hiding? None of them had noticed him? Was he here to interview someone? The director wanted to block the youngster instinctively. Bojio took a step forward in surprise, her gaze landing on his waist. It was a military knife, a model used for survival in the wilderness. Even though it was only a small part, it was enough for Bojio, who was familiar with such things, to lock onto it in an instant. Moreover, the person walked with a straight back and his movements were like a wild leopard. He had been in the cast for such a long time without being discovered. His anti-detection skills were extraordinary. Other than a soldier, no one else could do this. Are you Brother Mo's man? Bojio asked before the man could speak. He paused before nodding his head and passing the phone to Bojio. This is the video I took just now. Young master asked me to pass it to you. Everything he said about you is recorded clearly in the video, from the moment you entered the set to the moment you started fighting. Also, if it wasn't for a mission, I would have wanted to beat him up as well. Thank you for your help. With that, he retreated without waiting for a response. The director understood Mandarin. When he heard this, he made a decision: post the video online and tell everyone that Alan was kicked out of the cast because of his character. He was clearly in the wrong, yet he still tried to distort the truth. I don't want an actor like him. Alright. The assistant took the phone and tapped on the cast's account. All the media outlets were allowed to speak and they could be sent to any location. There wasn't a single piece of news, just a simple description of the entire incident. While everyone was focused on the phone, Bojio was thinking about something else. Yes, even though she hoped that this matter could be explained clearly, she wasn't representing herself. But compared to this, her attention was focused on something else. For instance, the Almighty had placed such a person beside her. What exactly was he trying to do? At this moment, Alan had already tasted the sweetness of the internet and started to fabricate even more recklessly. There was an actor who hadn't left. He was still in the cast, but he didn't participate in the subsequent filming, so he didn't know about the video. Taking advantage of this wave, he reposted a comment on his country's official Weibo and posted, "Sigh, I'm in the cast too. I used to like a certain someone, but now that I've seen him in person, my impression of him is decreasing. After all, we're overseas." This sentence seemed to prove that Spade Z was indeed the one who had tarnished the country's reputation. Many people couldn't hold it in anymore. Some media outlets started to join in. Just as a large amount of negative news started to flow out. Spade Z's official Weibo had already been destroyed. At this moment, they had to hand it to Sister Turtle for contacting manager Feng in time. All the fans would have to wait for the official inquiry before replying. At this moment, many people felt the need to bite their lips. Otherwise, whatever they said or replied would become a topic of discussion. Moreover, before the accurate facts were released, they wouldn't defend their idol the moment they opened their mouths. Big Spade had once said that there were no idols in front of the country. It wasn't difficult to be such a fan. The difficult ones were the fans who already knew the ins and outs of the matter from Feng Yi. How could they continue waiting? They gritted their teeth and refused to say anything that was the truth. Finally, they didn't have to wait anymore. Chapter 1092. There weren't many words, but it clearly explained the reason for Alan's expulsion. Those who wanted to know the details could click on the video below. Everyone couldn't help but click on the video. The moment it was opened, a youngster walked into the set with a black bag slung over his shoulder and a hand stuffed into his pocket. The youngster had exquisite features and was as fair as jade. Her silver hair was messy and fluttered in the wind. It was hard to tell if she was a man or a woman. The youngster wore a black earring on her ear, giving off a faint glow. Ostentatious, arrogant, handsome. This was the first time the overseas fans saw her. The first reply was, "He's just a pretty face," and the director chased Alan away because of him? When the video caught Alan cursing, he mouthed, "Chinese pig." At this moment, most of the people fell silent. They looked at the youngster's clear and determined gaze and could already predict what would happen next. But they didn't expect that this was just the beginning. Alan continued to provoke them. There was also a Chinese actor who started to pick on the youngster's aura. But unexpectedly, the climax of the video started at this moment. The youngster came out with her makeup, her black trench coat fluttering in the wind. In that instant, there was only one word that appeared in everyone's mind: vampire aristocrat. All the fans of the drama began to click on the exclamation mark. F***CK, this is the male idol of my heart. His entire aura changed. How did he do it? I'm going to cry. I apologize for my previous words. I shouldn't have judged if he was suitable for this role before seeing him. It's not just his looks, even his aura is similar. It's reasonable for the director to choose him. I used to think that no one in this world could act like my male idol. Now, I'm starting to look forward to it. I can't wait to see the final film. The filming crew didn't disappoint because the video continued. Alan's intention to take revenge was too obvious, so obvious that some people who were anti-Chinese like him knew what was going on. Just as everyone was worried that the youngster wouldn't be able to withstand Alan's punch. The most exciting scene in the crew happened. The young man's cool movements, and the moment his windbreaker fell, the man stood tall and straight beside Alan. From the bridge of his nose to his chin to his thin lips, a casual sentence became the fixed point. I hate people punching my face the most. And then the youngster said, "This is a Chinese fight scene." It was clearly telling Alan that those who insulted our country would be beaten. At the end of the video, there was a clear record of why Alan was kicked out of the cast, and there was another Chinese actor as a foil. In an instant, the number of reposts of the video had reached a breaking point. Spades fans were the first to leave a comment. I've never regretted being your fan. Next were more people who could tell right from wrong. Well done. Don't misunderstand, the person who said this was not a Chinese. They were locals. Ordinary people were the same in this aspect, especially the hot-blooded men. This young man's self-restraint is quite good. If it were me, I would directly send this person to hell. If anyone insults my country, I will stand up for them. This is a basic human principle, isn't it? Chapter 1093. Both Wuxia and American websites went to Alan's side to comment. They just wanted to ask him this question. Alan, who was originally sitting and preparing to accept the second round of media interviews, suddenly changed the question. They had discussed how the other party had used a scheme to exclude him and get him kicked out of the crew. But the first thing the person said was, "Alan, I have to ask on behalf of everyone. How do you feel now? Especially your face." What did that mean? Alan thought that someone was concerned about his injury, so he said, "Don't worry, everyone. My face is not seriously injured." There was a sudden silence, and then all the staff laughed, including the host who was interviewing Alan. Alan frowned at the laughter and the look in their eyes. At that moment, his agent walked over with his phone. Alan asked again, "What are you all laughing at?" "You'll have to take a look for yourself." The exterior host handed over the phone in his hand. Alan's eyes widened when he saw the comments. In the end, he couldn't even breathe steadily and his face turned red and white. He finally understood what they were laughing at. But this understanding would only make him more embarrassed. Realizing that the camera was still on him, Alan stretched out his hand to cover his face. His fleeing figure was like a mouse living in the dark. Not only that, but through the video, the Wuxia audience also realized something. That was the other Wuxia actor in the video. Everything he had done and said had been seen by the crowd. From today onwards, I won't watch someone's show anymore. I'm in the same row. Not only because his flattering expression has embarrassed the Wuxia people, but also because he is distorting the truth. Everyone should have seen the message he sent. I just feel disgusted now. They are both Wuxia people, but I see the difference. Doesn't he feel guilty sending such a message? He said that because we are in Wuxia and don't know what is happening abroad. People are really not what they used to be. When others are fighting for their country's face, another person is here slandering them. The truth swept over like a storm. At first, the male actor was still happy because of the benefits and popularity. When he saw that something was wrong, his first reaction was to delete the message he sent. However, this person had obviously underestimated the power of the crowd. Delete my blog? I've already taken a screenshot and made it into a moving picture to share with everyone. He took out his phone and called his manager. You have to get me out of this, I'm not the one in the wrong. Even if someone was bullied, it would be Alan. Are these people crazy? Why can't they let me go? Think of a way. Spadesy must have some dirt on him, help me dig it out and divert everyone's attention. Under normal circumstances, this was how the company operated. Even if the agent was put in a difficult position, she had to agree. After all, she had to save this kind of thing. Otherwise, why would the company hire her? The manager thought for about 3 minutes and prepared to leave. But before she could do anything, another headline appeared on China's website. The international movie queen personally released a statement to support Spadesy. Spadesy, even though he is overseas, he won't embarrass anyone. I am proud of his actions. When it comes to the country's honor, there is no tolerance. Some people are trying to distort the truth because their hearts are dirty and can't be saved. Movie queen and rarely spoke online. She was the goddess of countless fans, be it in China or overseas, from her looks to her acting skills and personality. She had always been elegant and firm. Many people still remembered that when she had first arrived in America, someone had asked her to be a bystander. This was what she had said. Before I came here, I was given the role of the second female lead. I'm sorry, I love acting and I want to bring Chinese culture here. But at the same time, please respect me. If you want me to be a bystander just to get the Chinese box office, I refuse to act. I have to be responsible to the audience. Admittedly, she hadn't gotten the role. But after that, as long as she acted in a role, it would always be amazing. Movie queen and didn't just gain the love of her countrymen, she also gained the respect of the American industry. They didn't try to cover everything with bias and invited her with sincerity until today. Movie queen Anne's bravery hadn't been extinguished. When the manager saw the news, she felt that there was no turning back. She was thinking of how to change the topic. However, the news that followed completely shattered her thoughts. It was from an official media outlet. There was a picture of the international superstar, Henry, smiling brightly as he hugged the shoulders of a silver-haired youngster. Below it were his own words in English. I got to know a new brother. He is extremely handsome. In terms of patriotism, we are the same. From him, I seem to have finally experienced the greatness of a great country. Young masters are like jade. So, we have decided to become sworn brothers today. All the words above were taught to me in Chinese by Jiu. He will also teach me Chinese Kung Fu. Cool. The media outlet commented, protecting the country and bringing glory to the country. This is how an idol should be. In that instant, the manager could almost imagine the outcome of her artist. What kind of person was he defaming? Putting aside the fact that he had the protection of the movie queen, he had become brothers with Henry after just one day. Moreover, what he had done was to protect the country and bring glory to the country. She couldn't be protected. Even the gods wouldn't be able to protect her artist. Alan was in the same situation. Because at this moment, it wasn't the Chinese audience who didn't accept him. It was the local audience who didn't accept him. They felt that he was despicable. The actors in the production team spoke up one after another. Those who were still mocking, Spade Z isn't a professional actor. Why would he be invited to act? Their faces were swollen from being slapped. The Chinese netizens were just about to end their comments. Just then, someone intercepted the comments left by some American netizens. The comments said, I can't describe my feelings right now. My idol seems to have come back to life. I just want to know when the main movie will be released. I can't wait to see the final movie. It's good that there's a trailer if there isn't a final movie. This youngster is too cool. He brought the character in the novel to life. Fans of the original novel asked if anyone has detailed information about this Asian youngster. I want to know more about him. What other dramas did he act in before? I can search for them. My friend in China said that he isn't an actor. Not an actor? Then ask your friend in China if they have any information about him. I want to know. When the Chinese netizens saw these comments, they wanted to tell them, don't ask your friend. Come to our Chinese website. We are going to do science, American friends. Spade Z's fans were dumbfounded. After all, they immediately accepted the fact that the youngster they liked, who held the mouse and beat up all the wild beasts, had suddenly become an actor that was loved by foreigners. They felt a little panicked and proud. When they saw the news on Weibo, they wanted to roll around on the bed. Only fans could understand this feeling. Yet there were still some sarcastic comments. Isn't he playing games? Why did he turn into an actor? No wonder there was a farewell party. So, someone is short of money and wants to become an actor to earn money. If he's really a rich young master, why would he come to play games? In response to such comments, Supreme Alliance's official reply came. Spade Z is acting out of friendship. This is the only movie. He will not be involved in the entertainment industry in the future. Acting out of friendship? With whom? This was very mysterious, but there were still astute fans. I want to say something. There's something I've been keeping in my heart for a long time, but I don't dare to say it. Now I have to say it. If you don't say it, we'll make you shut up. Am I the only one who thinks our almighty Qin looks like movie queenin? Comrades, don't flatter me. My heart will tremble if you continue like this. Don't they look alike? Please give me a word, I hope it's not just a symbol. F***CK girl, my phone jammed. I just wanted to say that you're right, I think they look alike too. They don't just look alike. Look closely, the nose, the mouth, and especially the eyes. Movie queen and has an overseas bloodline. So does Almighty Qin. What secret did we discover? Wait a minute, do any of you know Movie Queen Anne's age? Movie Queen Anne's face isn't easy to guess. Let's use logical elimination. Almighty Qin's sister? Impossible, Almighty Qin is his only son. His cousin? They look alike, but the Qin family's cousin doesn't have the surname N. I remember an interview. Almighty Qin said his mother's surname was N. Almighty Qin's mother is Movie Queen N? So this time Big Spade's acting out of friendship is because of Almighty Qin? Facepalm, why do I feel like I've been fed another round of dog food? I'm convinced by Big Spade and Almighty Qin's parents. I've decided to turn off my computer for this PDA show. 5 words are floating in the sky. Daughter-in-law meets mother-in-law. The CP fans felt that this candy was a little sweet. After all, from Movie Queen Anne's words, they could hear her admiration for Big Spade. It was sweet everywhere. Chapter 1094. The chauffeur and butler was bending over to serve tea. The atmosphere was completely different from the Qin family's house. Even the dining table was a European style. The butler's attire and the tea he served exuded an aristocratic aura. Earl Black tea paired with slightly sweet pastries was a delightful combination. Besides, he remembered that his young master didn't hate eating. But today, the butler sized up his young master's side profile, an indescribable coldness in him. What was going on? Qin Mo held onto his phone, his uninjured hand picking up the spoon, eating elegantly. The butler was about to leave. A casual voice came from behind him. It's a little sour. What? The butler turned back. Qin Mo wiped his mouth with a napkin, stuffing a hand into his pocket as he stood up. The pastries are a little sour. With that, Qin Mo walked up the stairs. As an outstanding butler, how could the pastries he made be sour? The handsome butler studied the pastries on the wooden table, dipping his finger into it. It was obviously sweet and sour. What was wrong with his young master today? Was his taste buds out of whack? The butler didn't have a habit of looking at Weibo, so he didn't know what was wrong with Qin Mo. At this moment, Movie Queen Anne and Bo Jio were finally facing each other on the set. Anyone who had worked in a movie would know that filming didn't follow the sequence of the script. Instead, they would film the scene that was suitable for them. The weather was perfect. With the lingering light of dusk, they could clearly capture the sunlight splashing onto their hair. Bo Jio sat in front of a computer, still wearing the black trench coat. She wasn't wearing her hat, her long fingers tapping on the keyboard. The actors watching from the side were still thinking that this scene would require post-production since no one would be able to type so many words and codes in such a short period of time. But the moment the camera started rolling, everyone was shocked. The youngster's fingers moved swiftly, moving up and down so fast that it seemed like an afterimage. A dialogue box popped up on the screen as though there was some code running through it. Amazing. That was amazing. The director's happiness was obvious. It was also from this moment on that the crew members understood something. The director hadn't chosen the youngster for this role just because of his face. If they hadn't known it was an act, they would have assumed that the youngster was attacking the internet. That's awesome. Jio, you're amazing. Henry was the first to run towards her. As an American, he was passionate and wanted to give the youngster a hug. Bo Jio turned, a faint smile on her face. Harry, do you still want to learn Chinese Kung Fu? Of course. Henry crossed his arms in front of his chest. He was indeed very handsome when he smiled. Bo Jio glanced up, her gaze landing on a spot. She turned and said, "Do you see the person sitting on the other side of the wall? He's dressed in black. Before learning martial arts, you have to train your observation skills and reflexes. I'll go in to change my clothes later. You'll be in charge of diverting his attention." That's it? Henry didn't think it was real. Bo Jio thought for a moment and pretended to take out a book from her bag. There were only 3 words written on it: Secret of Kung Fu. This is our family heirloom. I don't usually tell others, but I'm passing it to you now. Bo Jio shrugged. You should believe me now, right? Harry gave him a thumbs up. Good brother, I'm going to train now. I'll start training after I'm done. Go ahead. Bo Jio smiled. She waited for Henry to block someone's line of sight before she took the opportunity to move. She kicked the car with her long legs and climbed up the tree and over the wall. Her movements were agile. Henry still didn't know his main purpose. He saw his target staring at him like a wolf. As an actor, he successfully maintained the stalemate for 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, the other party finally changed to another spot. This way he should be able to pass. Henry thought about it and hid this secret of kung fu in his hands. Excuse me? They were all physics questions. Chapter 1095. The expression on Henry's face changed several times. *CK. What happened to the basic trust between humans? At this moment, the person who had been watching Bo Jio appeared. From his angle, he had thought that Bo Jio had entered the changing room. In reality, the youngster had already passed through the alleys as though she was doing parkour. Bo Jio moved quickly. She was like a living map with a cheat code. After all, this was her territory. She could take shortcuts even if she closed her eyes. In the end, she stopped at the most famous street in America, Fifth Avenue. There were jewelry, leather, clothing, and cosmetics shops here. Every year it attracted thousands of tourists. At this moment, Bo Jio slowed down her footsteps and walked towards an old phone booth. It was located at the entrance of the alley. When Bo Jio walked in, there were a few black men who were scribbling. They paused and glanced at Bo Jio, their gaze unreadable. Bo Jio's attire prevented them from moving, but they exchanged glances. Bo Jio didn't say a word. She held onto an electronic cigarette lighter with one hand and pressed it. There was a click. She tilted her head and lit a cigarette. In perfect English she said, "Bro, give way?" When the few black men saw the silver words flash past, they were stunned. They took 2 steps back. They didn't leave. They just couldn't believe it. Did they recognize the wrong person? How could they see that thing? But they looked up at the youngster. The back view was indeed similar. What should we do? Continue to scribble. Don't care? Didn't you see the thing in that person's hand? How are we going to care? Just do what you have to do. Bo Jio entered the phone booth as though there was no one else around. She placed her finger on it and placed a coin in it. Then she pressed a string of numbers that seemed to be a password. There was a loud rumble. The wall where the phone was connected to slowly opened to one side, revealing a passageway. Bo Jio stuffed a hand into her pocket. She turned back and smiled devilishly at the black men who were still sneaking glances at her. "You're right, I'm back. *CK. At this moment, the shock in their hearts could be heard all over the world. At first, those few black men still doubted whether the other party was the one who had beaten them until their teeth fell all over the floor. But now they were sure it was her. But even if he knew, there was nothing he could do. He would suffer internal injuries. After all, there was no way he could beat them. We're all neighbors just like before. Please take care of me." Bo Jio flipped over and waved. The few black men outside just wanted to roar. "What do you mean by, take good care of me?" Bo Jio didn't turn back as she walked up the stairs. It was a vast expanse of darkness. There seemed to be no end to it. It seemed like no one had been here before. Bo Jio arched a brow and pressed her fingers against the wall. Swoosh. The lights of the entire place lit up. It was even a little dazzling. Bo Jio stretched out her arm to block it. It was also at that moment. The whole picture of this place was completely revealed. The 2-story building was very large. It looked like a residence, but at the same time it wasn't. Although there was a bed on the 2nd floor, it didn't look like it was used for sleeping. Instead, it looked like a temporary resting place. More than 900 square meters. There seemed to be something parked on the 1st floor, but unfortunately, it was all covered by white cloth. Bo Jio walked over casually. Then she lifted her thin lips and raised her right hand. Swoosh. When the white cloth was lifted, the beautiful and smooth curves of the car with an untamed black luster were revealed. Lamborghini Bat. The limited edition sports car that could increase its speed in an instant. It got its name because of its cool wings. This wasn't a place for people to stay. It was Bo Jio's private garage. Other than Bat, there were 2 other sports cars and a BMW Tomahawk. Bo Jio stood in the middle, not feeling out of place. It was as though this was where she should be. "Little Blackie, I'm back. It's time for you to wake up." Bo Jio's voice was lazy. But there was no one here. Who was she talking to? However, her voice was effective. There was a ding. Something seemed to be activated. Identifying the source of the sound. 20%, 40%, 100%. The sound source is confirmed. It matches 90%. Sorry, it can't be activated. 90%? At this moment, Bo Jio finally remembered that she had changed her body. Switch to manual password activation. Bo Jio sighed helplessly. She pressed her fingers on the car. Starting to verify the password. Take note, if the password is wrong you will have to bear the consequences. Bojio arched a brow. I should have made you more humorous. This reminder is too stiff. With that, Bojio moved her fingers. After she entered the password, the car lights lit up. Master, I really didn't expect you to come back alive. Why didn't your voice match? It turned out that this was a modified car. It was fully equipped with intelligent parts and the navigation system was different from normal cars. I'm still hesitating. Should I let you drive me? Bojio was already in the driver's seat. Her fingers were on the steering wheel. She tilted her head and laughed devilishly. Do you want me to activate your self-destruct password for you to verify? The navigation line wavered. It was extremely serious. Oh, Master, I missed you so much when you were away. I was afraid that you wouldn't be able to eat or sleep well outside. I was afraid that you would be seduced by some flirtatious little b*tc. As a car I was really worried. You're good at steering with the wind. Bojio patted the steering wheel. The navigation line wavered again. That's one of my many strengths. Alright, reset the sound wave. Bojio entered a string of password on the navigation system. We'll begin the sound wave identification. Reset. Password changed. Even the password has to be changed? Of course. Alright, what's the voice password? Can you not stand up and masturbate? Sure, I'm very cultured now. I'm looking forward to Master's upbringing. I like you, Chinemo. What? The voice password is set to, I like you, Chinemo. Don't bully an intelligent system for being uncultured. It knew the feeling of liking someone through a search. Oh Master, you really? Not saying anything, not saying anything. When the password was reset and the car started, all the lights in the garage lit up, including all the hidden doors. The scene was so cool that it seemed like it could only be seen in a movie. Bojio turned her fingers. With a beautiful drift, she drove out of the garage. Who would have imagined that such a beautiful sports car would suddenly appear in an alley? The few black men bumped their heads. Once again they confirmed that it was indeed that fellow. Same family. Bojio only had to say 2 words before the intelligent system recognized her voice and navigated the entire route. She drove along the nearest road. First, she passed through the tall buildings on both sides of the road. Then she flew towards the long bridge. That kind of speed and model would attract many people's attention when they passed by. It wasn't until the car drove further and further into the east that the surroundings gradually became covered with trees. She followed the road and pushed aside the rising light. Only the castle in the forest was left. The castle wasn't big, but it seemed to be from a long time ago. It was rumored that this was once owned by an aristocrat. Later on, the aristocrat declined and mortgaged the castle in the 19th century. Many people said that this was a mysterious place. The people who lived there must be the blood-sucking clan. If not, there wouldn't be so many roses outside. However, it was a place that everyone yearned for. During the day when the sun shone and the roses bloomed, there would always be an old butler. In the afternoon he would walk out with a pocket watch. He would check the time and then place a pot of Earl Black tea and exquisite pastries in the courtyard. However, what made people afraid to approach him was that beside those things, there was a jar. In the jar there were either severed hands or legs. That wasn't all. The old butler actually used the scalpel in his hand to cut the pastries and put them into his mouth. That scene had already scared a lot of people who wanted to come here to visit. Even when the old butler saw a child and wanted to give him a piece of candy, he was scared to tears. He thought that nothing would change here. It was the same point again. The door of the castle opened. The old butler had white hair. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit and wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. He looked at the pocket watch in his hand and then scattered something to the white pigeon in the courtyard. Then he turned and pushed the metal dining cart out. He placed the things in the middle of the courtyard. The weather is not bad. The old butler muttered to himself as if he was used to talking alone. He squinted at the sunlight jumping on the flowers and trees. He took a sip of tea leisurely and was about to cut the pastries. White pigeons flew everywhere and the sound of a car came from afar. The old butler frowned and muttered, "It's here again." When he stood up and was about to decline the guest, he saw the silhouette of the car and was shocked to the ground. One could clearly see that the sunlight was shaking violently in his eyes. The old butler had never lost his composure like this before. After all, the first word that came to everyone's mind when they saw him was seriousness. But at this moment he even walked faster than usual. He didn't care if the teacup on the table fell to the ground. He just walked quickly out of the courtyard and waited for the car door to open. The car door did indeed open. A young man walked out from within. Silver hair? The old butler loosened his grip on the pocket watch. His eyes were full of disappointment. It wasn't the young master, he was thinking too much. But the next second, the teenager's voice came. Grandpa Butler, I wonder if there are sweets to eat at this hour. The old butler was shocked. He looked at the teenager again. This appearance. That was impossible. He had been waiting for the young master to come back. But in his heart, he also knew that the young master was definitely in danger. Otherwise, there wouldn't be no news for so long. Chapter 1096. This isn't my body. Grandfather Butler, you're a big shot in the medical world and you only believe in science. But I can't explain this. My thoughts and memories, along with my mole, have been reborn into this body. The old butler was much calmer now. Take a seat. Bojio knew that Grandfather Butler wouldn't believe her immediately. She turned to look for help. Little Blackie, help me say something. Yes. The car lights lit up and the navigation ripples appeared. I don't know which little vixen has seduced Master's soul. Even the password has been changed to, I like your sultry voice. Grandpa Butler, you have to control her. Bojio. F***ck, who allowed you to say that? The old butler had always been clear-headed. He believed Bojio now. But from his perspective he had to be more cautious. Especially after his young lord left. He had heard rumors that someone had impersonated his young lord before. Hence, stay for dinner? Bojio rubbed her forehead, troubled. This won't do, Grandfather Butler. I have something to do and have to head back. I know you don't believe me, but how about this? Since things have come to this, I can only expose your shortcomings and tell you that I'm the real one. For example, when we were young, you would bring me around to give sweets to the children. You said that bringing me along would make you more approachable. Otherwise, the children would cry the moment they saw you, which made you feel defeated. That's right, it's indeed a failure as a doctor. The old butler's veins popped. He started to clench his fists. If he had a walking stick in his hand, he would definitely hit her. Unexpectedly, the youngster was still as lovable and hateful as before. But immediately there was a twist. Even so, in my heart, Grandfather Butler has always been the most caring doctor. Bad. Everyone should know who he inherited his ability to act according to the situation. The old butler suppressed his laughter. Flattery won't work. I really can't have dinner. Bojio smiled mischievously. Grandfather Butler, you already know that I'm real. You just want me to have dinner with you. Don't worry, I'll bring someone over for dinner tomorrow night. The old butler was certain that she was his young lord. Reborn into another person's body? Stop, Grandpa Butler, I'm not going to let you do physical research. Bojio raised her hands high, behaving like a rich young master. But I need Grandfather Butler to treat someone. The old butler humphed. Young master, shouldn't you first tell me why you haven't returned home for so long? Would you believe me if I told you I did it to woo a man? Bojio smiled. The old butler rubbed his forehead. How many times have I told you, young master, as a lady, you have to be more elegant? I will elegantly state that I want to kidnap him tomorrow. Bojio smiled. I need Grandfather Butler's help. The old butler was very smart. There are very few people that young master can't handle alone. Who is he? Bojio caressed her nose. Captain of the Special Forces, criminal psychologist, the only heir of the Qin family, grandson of the Yin family. These were layers upon layers of relationships. It made the old butler feel more and more headache. Is it the Yin family that I know? It's that Yin family. Bojio sat on the chair. They are rich, that's why I'm so passive. Chapter 1097. Bojio caressed her nose. The captain of the Special Forces, a criminal psychologist, the only heir of the Qin family and the grandson of the Yin family. There were so many layers of relationships. The old butler felt his head hurting. The Yin family that I know of? The Yin family. Bojio sat on the chair. They are rich, that's why I'm in such a passive position. The old butler glanced at his young lord's desolate expression, assuming that she was putting on a show. He placed his hands behind his back and spat out, "Tie her up." At the same time, at the Yin family mansion, a blond man with a hooked nose and a blade strolled in. He was in his late 30s, but Americans looked more mature than Chinese people of the same age. He was dressed casually, but his steps were graceful. Even though he didn't bother with the small details, he was well-mannered. He entered the hall and removed his hat. Is Qin in? The butler was momentarily stunned when he saw the person, but he regained his elegance. Young master is in the study. He was in a rush. If Qin was back, he would definitely be able to solve the case on his hands. The wooden door to the study opened. Qin Mo glanced up, expecting to see the youngster who should be back by now. He hadn't expected to see an old friend. You left in such a hurry? I don't think it was just to send me a document. Qin Mo sat with his legs crossed, placing his pen on the table. It wasn't anyone else, it was the famous investigator from the FBI, Stephen. He sat on the chair. Qin, I encountered a difficult case and need your help. Qin Mo stood up, grabbing a newspaper from the coffee table. He flipped it open and glanced through it. Stephen couldn't sit still. Qin, I'm serious, this case is really strange. The criminal knows hypnosis. Qin Mo interrupted him calmly. He was still as handsome as ever. The crime scene has been destroyed. Your investigation isn't going in the right direction. Stephen's eyes widened. You saw the crime scene? How is that possible? Qin Mo reached out and pressed the back of the newspaper, tapping it with his fingertips. Here, the serial suicide case. Someone is suspecting the culprit. The photos were taken by the accompanying media. That's it. Stephen's body was no longer as tense as before. I thought you had some special ability to see the cases here from China. Qin Mo was still looking at the photos in the newspaper. His voice was neither fast nor slow. Do you know why hypnotists are successful? It's because they don't just divert people's attention, they can also understand the psychology of ordinary people to a certain extent. They don't necessarily have to be at the scene to get the information. Stephen shrugged. Well, he was now classified as a normal person. There must be a connection between the victims. Qin Mo retracted his gaze. Find the connection. Hearing that, Stephen stood up and wanted to leave. He was very emotional. Qin Mo frowned. Information. Stephen was helpless. I've already given you all the information on Z. Moreover, didn't she go to China? Why are you here in America? At this point, Stephen seemed to realize something. He suddenly raised his head and stuttered, Don't tell me that guy is back? Qin Mo glanced at him and spat out 2 words. No. Stephen muttered, That's good. Otherwise, I'll have to make another report. What was my subordinate, Smith, thinking? He insisted on going to China to capture Z. Now that he's back, I don't know what kind of blow he suffered, but he's depressed all day. Compared to when he made the report, his aura seems even lower. Smith? Qin Mo arched a brow. Stephen nodded. Smith, what's wrong? Nothing. Qin Mo smiled teasingly. You should leave, officer. Stephen. Didn't they say that Chinese people were warm and hospitable, especially foreigners? He must have gotten to know a fake Chinese person. But this trip wasn't in vain. The moment Stephen left the villa, he turned on the police light in his car. Qin Mo asked him to leave because too much time had passed. A certain someone should be back soon. Qin Mo unlocked his phone and dialed a number. Turn off his phone? Before leaving the country, the two of them had activated international roaming so that it would be easier to contact each other. Qin Mo's eyes dimmed when he heard the notification. He didn't call movie queen in. Instead, he pressed a string of numbers, his voice low. Go take a look at young Master Gio. Young Master Gio is still in the makeup removal room. It isn't convenient for me to go in. The person who spoke was at the filming location. It was the person who had video called Bogio. Qin Mo's frown deepened. Makeup room? How long has she been in there? Half an hour, the same for the other actors. Other than removing their makeup, they have to change their clothes. It's normal. Normal to others. But not to a certain someone. Qin Mo lowered his voice. Ask the staff to confirm if she is really removing her makeup. Yes. The moment the person heard his young master's order, he realized something was amiss. By the time he asked the staff, his throat was a little dry. Qin Mo didn't hang up. What's the situation? Young Master Gio didn't enter the makeup removal room. The person wanted to say that he had seen her enter with his own eyes, but in the next second, he remembered something. It's that person just now. That person had blocked his view. That was when young Master Gio had disappeared. Qin Mo tightened his grip on the phone, his back turning stiff. He had already made preparations, but wasn't it enough? Send someone to look for her. The coldness in Qin Mo's eyes was like a thick fog, entangling within. Focus on investigating Fifth Avenue. Yes. In reality, Qin Mo didn't know how he had hung up. That person had really left. She hadn't said anything, didn't leave any address, didn't even say goodbye. Chinamo sat there, his heart feeling like it had been hollowed out. Before he had come here, he had heard her calling him Brother Emo. She seemed to be planning something when she was eating, her head furry like a little fox. Even though she was efficient, she was like a child at certain times. Hence, he wanted to take care of her no matter what. It was as though just hugging her and smelling her hair would make him feel better. She had been so close, but she had suddenly disappeared. The phone screen lit up. It was a photo of the two of them. Chinmo's heart suddenly hurt so much that he had to bend over to stand up. It wasn't possible for him to continue sitting in the study. Chinmo went to the filming location personally. Movie Queen was still filming. But Chinmo didn't look for Movie Queen, he looked for the director. Are you saying that all the scenes have been filmed? It's only been a day? Chinmo frowned. The director sat there taking a break. I find this progress unbelievable too. Young Master Gio has a good grasp of the character's personality. All the scenes were shot in one go, and it was even more outstanding than I had imagined. It was as though he had always been that person. It was amazing. The director was excited when he talked about this, even showing the youngster's last scene. That scene was originally reserved for the opening scene. At that time, the youngster wasn't wearing a black trench coat. Instead, he was wearing a pure white shirt. He was sitting on a branch with lush foliage, with a book covering his face. After hearing the sound, he seemed to have just woken up from a dream. He took the book away with one hand, and his eyes were as bright as stars as he looked at the camera with a smile. His silver hair was a little messy, and two of the buttons on his shirt were undone. He looked extremely casual. Leaves fell, landing on the youngster's shoulders. When he blew on them, the scene was filled with the smell of sunshine. It was this youngster who appeared at the end. He was dressed in black and looked extremely handsome. Chinamo looked at the camera, his eyes undulating with intense emotions, but he restrained himself. He placed his fingers on his knees, clenched and released them. Thank you, director. I have something to do, goodbye. Chinamo stood up, walking towards the car. At this moment he was certain. Someone had planned this from the start. Although it was just like what the director had said, many people couldn't finish filming in one day. But looking at the entire movie, a certain someone didn't appear in many scenes. A certain someone did not appear in many scenes. Most of the time it was just her back. Only 3 scenes had captured her face. Therefore it was not impossible to finish shooting all the scenes in one day. As long as that person had a heart. Chinamo sat in the car, one hand gripping the steering wheel tightly. He knew she was planning to leave. However, he didn't expect that she didn't miss it at all. Chinamo started the car at a frightening speed. What he didn't know was that when he started the car, a voice suddenly rang out. Behind his car, another car quickly caught up with him. The car came out from the side. It had smooth lines and was completely black. It also exuded a domineering aura. Master, as a qualified sports car, I have to give you a suggestion. Judging from the speed of the other party's car, his emotions are very unstable. Should we bring some weapons? Swoosh. Beautiful tail wagging. Bojio stopped the car, feeling slightly guilty. You don't have to take the weapon. The navigation bar moved. I didn't expect Master to have a guilty conscience. As long as I have the medicine grandfather Butler gave me. Bojio glanced sideways, her gaze landing on the passenger seat. The navigation bar. What kind of guilty conscience was that? As expected, it couldn't understand human emotions. I have to think of a way to make the Almighty stop. Bojio's eyes moved. She remembered the phone in her pocket. She pressed the button to light it up. When she saw the 20 unread messages, she felt even more guilty. Even through the screen, she could feel the Almighty's desire to kill her. But since things had come to this, it would be a waste of time to be sentimental. She had to tie him up. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.